It's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program here. As always, you're invited if you want to join us. You can bring up anything that you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online anytime you want. Just head over to freetalklive.com and you'll find a bunch of hopefully useful and interesting features and stuff there for you. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Mark.
All right, so Mark is back for a limited time engagement here in New Hampshire. Welcome back.
I'm so glad to be back. And I'm so glad to have been able to perform the marriage ceremony for the two of you yesterday.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
thank you,
it was
Mark.
very kind.
So, and all the congratulations here, Mrs. Freeman.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so lots to talk about tonight.
Interestingly, you're supposed to wish congratulations to the man because he got lucky.
Yeah,
right?
I heard about that.
So it's like if somebody won the lottery, you'd say congratulations.
So
right?
yeah, why did you tell him not congratulations to him?
You're right, I was totally wrong. Congratulations to Ian.
I am very fortunate.
To Mrs. Freeman, on the other hand, best wishes.
Isn't that what you just say to somebody who's like
sick?
Yeah, and unwell.
Okay. Well, she did marry you.
Anyway,
can't undo it now.
The number is 603-283-6160. Edward Snowden is now officially a Russian.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently Vladimir Putin granted him citizenship. As you know, Edward Snowden, nearly a decade ago, came out with the various revelations, or at least for a lot of people, what were revelations. For those who sort of knew the government was spying on its own people, it wasn't a huge shock, just confirmation of what a lot of people long suspected, and it's hard to believe that it's been almost 10 years. This coming summer of 2023, it will be 10 years since the NSA stuff.
I have a question. Why did you say the government is spying on its own people?
Old habit, I guess.
Yeah, I think that sounds really, really bad. That sounds terrible in my opinion.
How would you say it?
I'd say there's a gang of criminals spying on people around them.
Calling themselves the government?
Calling themselves the government.
Don't you kind of voluntarily opt into it, though, by staying where the piece of land that they claim?
There's not another place on the earth that's not owned by a government gang, including your island.
All kinds of places you can go where the government won't spy on you and they won't pay attention. I mean...
Are there?
Yeah, you can go places. They don't have Walmart.
I'm pretty sure if Ian went anywhere, the government's still going to be spying on him.
They're going to be looking for him if he goes anywhere because he is currently under bail conditions.
Well, not just that. Even if he got set free tomorrow, I'm pretty sure wherever he went, the government would keep an eye on him.
It could be the case that he would be considered a large enough target, but at the very least, they wouldn't be able to trump up silly excuses for raiding a studio. They'd need to have something more in order to send foreign police. It's not like they can send the FBI in on foreign land, so they have to have better. They'd have to have better reasoning than we think maybe there's been a violation of some banking laws in the United States.
Well, I mean, if it's Russia, then they're going to do whatever they want to do to you, right? Like, they don't even have the same kind of ostensibly constitutional protections. I mean, Russia is way down the list on the economic freedom rankings in the world, and it doesn't do so good in personal freedoms either. I mean, this is not one of the freest places. Ukraine isn't much better, if worse. I'm not sure.
Right, I don't know where they're at.
They're in the same range,
yeah.
Basically, and Ukraine.
People think that Ukraine. It seems to be that people around the world think that Ukraine is some kind of liberal democracy.
Straight up lie.
That basically it's Estonia, and it's just not.
No, it's not.
It's one totalitarian, authoritarian government, inefficient government attacking another, and I'm supposed to care about these two regions on the edge as to who gets to oppress the people that are there. I don't.
Well, you might have heard that Biden is sending an extra $12 billion to Ukraine.
I haven't heard, but I am unsurprised.
Yeah, just keeps on coming.
Am not paying that much attention to news these days because as a non-American, and that's what I consider myself, I just don't have to think about this stuff anymore. I moved away from the United States in 2020, and you guys in your politics, you can continue to do your stuff.
Well, Snowden is out, and he's never coming back because they're not going to pardon him here, most likely.
He'll be lucky if they don't assassinate him.
Yeah, and I suspect that's one of the reasons why he is where he is. And according to the story over at RT.com, Vladimir Putin has granted Russian citizenship to U.S. National Security Agency whistleblower Edward Snowden, according to the TASS news agency on Monday. That's Russia's own propaganda. The American's name was included without fanfare on a list of 72 foreigners who became citizens.
Without fanfare, I like that.
Snowden, who applied for citizenship in...
Can you imagine the person who ran across it the first time, the press agent or whatever? What?
You don't think they would have known?
That was going to happen? It said was without ceremony.
There? Well, I don't know. Snowden applied for citizenship in 2020 upon receiving permanent residency rights. Has not commented on the decision as of Monday evening Moscow time. His wife will also apply for citizenship. According to his lawyer, the former contractor is not eligible for mobilization to the Ukrainian front as he did not serve in the Russian army. Okay. Because I know that they are supposedly drafting people to go fight in the Donbass.
Wait, how would he have fought in the Russian army? Isn't he an American?
He has not, right? So, yeah, that's why he has not.
What they're saying is that if you were Russian, presumably you had to go through the Russian military. You have already gotten your training. You are therefore a reservist. And if you remember what the United States did to reservists during the Iraq War, they were calling up. They were calling up reservists in their 60s for the Iraq War, and now Russia appears to be doing the same.
So the fact that
I know you're not supposed to compare United States and Russia. Sorry about that.
While the fact that Snowden has lived in Russia since fleeing the U.S. in 2013 has been held up as proof that he was undermining the U.S. government on behalf of Moscow.
That's just proof he didn't want to go to prison.
He was marooned in the airport there upon arriving from Hong Kong to catch a flight to Cuba after the U.S. canceled his passport mid-flight. So he actually didn't plan to go to Russia.
Wait, so just showing what the government is actually doing is supposedly undermining the United States to help another country. It's just by shining light on what the government is actually doing.
Correct, yeah. He was reportedly en route to Ecuador, where he had lodged an asylum request with what was then a government friendly toward American dissidents. And of course, we know that the Ecuadorian president has since that time changed. And, well, one politician to the next, big changes can be made for things like dissidents and those seeking asylum, and that's the reason why Julian Assange was released from the Ecuadorian prison, or not prison, sorry, the embassy there in the UK after he had been there for something like 5 or 6 years. It was the new president that got elected that decided to just cut him loose into the hands of the UK government gang. Yeah,
and they were waiting and waiting and waiting for him. I can't believe he didn't, it's not that hard for somebody who's got some financial means, and I'm not saying that Assange does, but certainly WikiLeaks could put something together to just sort of have a jet waiting at the airport, and then,
Yeah, but they had surveillance outside the apartment building.
Come on.
Oh,
constantly
24/7
for 7 years.
Supposedly they did.
Come on. I mean, you couldn't sneak out in that amount of time.
Just go
How
in
many
a
people
suitcase.
came and went from... Right. How many people came and went from the Ecuadorian embassy and then out the back in the trash and God knows what?
He didn't try it for whatever reason.
I know.
And I remember there was a story in the news about some people advocating that less money should be spent on that surveillance, but it was in the news that there was that surveillance. Now, whether or not it was legit or if it was really there 24/7, I don't know. But they got a lot of money to spend on this guy, clearly. I mean, they've held him in prison ever since, even though he's not actually, he's been cleared of all the charges he was originally arrested for, and now they're just holding him to take him to the U.S. on an extradition. It still hasn't been decided, by the way, on Assange. He's appealing up to the Supreme Court there.
But if he's appealing, doesn't that mean they continue on with what they're doing anyway while the appeal goes on?
Well, I mean, his appeal is appealing the question of extradition, so he will not be extradited until the appeal is heard. Because once you extradite him, the U.S. isn't going to hand him back if the U.K. decides that they shouldn't have done that. The number here is 603-283-6160. You can weigh in on Snowden or Assange. Or coming up, a judge has blocked a new Arizona law that prohibited filming cops.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. All you got to do is dial in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online over at freetalklive.com, and you can enjoy the various features that we have for you there. Once again, that is freetalklive.com as we continue. And I do want to let you know about Bitcoin.com. So if you're interested in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, you want to learn the basics. A good place to go and do that would be Bitcoin.com. They can help you with that. Just click Get Started right there at the top of the page at Bitcoin.com. Then it'll take you some introductory information and videos and such that you can watch and learn all kinds of stuff that you didn't know before about the new technology that is changing the world of finance in a way that really helps the individual. It really helps the average person take control of their value that they've created in their life, get it out of the hands of the government, get it out of the hands of the big banks, and learn why all of that matters and what decentralization does for the idea of money over at Bitcoin.com. Just click Get Started at the top of the page. Ian, Bonnie, and Mark here in the studio tonight. We're talking about Edward Snowden being given citizenship there in Russia. He had become a resident, or whatever you call that, resident alien or something, for some number of years, and then applied for citizenship. Has been granted now, and so I guess he's going to be staying there unless he can get a Russian passport. Maybe since he's a Russian citizen, he could get a Russian passport.
Of course he could. Sure. That's part of one of the things you enjoy with a passport. The question is...
With citizenship.
Citizenship, yeah. I mean, I can't think of any citizenship other than something like North Korea or something that you wouldn't expect to be able to get a passport.
So this may let him leave, in theory, if he's willing to risk it.
The largest country in the world, geographically.
Yeah, this would now allow him to fly out of Russia and, in theory,
and go
somewhere else that's not going to hand him over to the United States.
Where's that?
Probably China.
So I wouldn't take anything but a direct flight.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah.
Not on an American airline either.
And, I wouldn't trust, you just said China. Yeah. I wouldn't trust, and by the way, Xi Jinping may very well be under house arrest right now with a Chinese revolution going on.
Wait,
what is this?
Do you mean like a COVID-type house arrest? Or?
No.
What Chinese revolution?
There are rumors floating that he's under house arrest.
The president of the country?
Yeah.
Wow, I had not heard that one. I've heard about the protests in...
And they're rumors. This is not news. I'm just saying that here's what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't trust the Chinese government to not use me as a pawn in some kind of international intrigue. Yeah. We'll trade you Snowden for Taiwan.
That's
that kind
point.
of thing.
That's a good point, yeah. He seems to be relatively okay there in Russia.
There's so much to look at and do. There's I heard 50 different... different types of ethnic groups just in Russia.
Wow.
Or maybe more than that, 100 or something. I wish I knew the actual number before I said that. And it's just, like he said, the biggest country in the world. There's lots of different cities, different terrain. I would like to go to Russia.
Not going to happen anytime soon, I'm afraid. But it's an interesting place. 144 million people, if I recall correctly, there. And, of course, the gas is really cheap in Russia.
It's still... kind of a small number for population because it's so cold.
It's cold, yes, exactly. So the number here is 603-283-6160. Coming up here, maybe we get the chance, since we're talking about the sort of the heroic people that the state in the U.S. is attacking or trying to attack. It's actually a nice letter that was written to Ross Ulbricht by friend of the show, longtime supporter Eric Voorhees in the cryptocurrency world. Might share that here in a little bit as well. If you want to join the show, though, the number is 603-283-6160. Bonnie, you had an update, because I think we did talk about this story out of Arizona when it was in the works. They were working on, and I guess they subsequently passed, some sort of legislation that prohibits people with video devices from getting too close for comfort, apparently, to Arizona police. And when we talked about it here, we said, well, this is clearly unconstitutional, telling people that, yeah, you can record, but only from a far distance away. I don't remember if it was...
It says 8 feet.
Yeah, 8 feet away from the officer. And certainly, if you get too close to a police officer, it's like getting close to an angry dog or a bear or something like that. You are risking them attacking you in some way, whether or not there's a law. You're just risking just a personal...
I mean, they don't have to listen to laws. They'll do something to you and have immunity from it anyway.
That's true.
So you're kind of a more of an expert on this than I am, let's say that, and probably more of an expert than the vast majority of the people listening.
Because I've done a lot of recording.
You've done a lot of recording. Now, you have some specialized recording devices, but you probably know the answer to this question is, how close do you need to be with your phone in order to get, orders that are barked out at somebody who's being wrestled to the ground and things like that?
It depends. I mean, it depends on how far the sound is carrying. Are they yelling? Okay, if they're barking orders, then you probably don't have to be that close. But if you are at
that close meaning 8 feet?
Less than 8 feet, yeah. If you are at a pullover and there's car engines that are running, you got the cop's engine running, the car that was pulled over's engine's running, you got a cop, you're standing on the sidewalk, the driver's side is on the other side from where you are.
Yep.
And the cop standing at that window, it's going to be hard to hear what's being said.
Why even wonder how far away do you need to get to film these people who are legally allowed to jump on top and hold you down and handcuff your hands behind your back? You should be able to get as close to those people doing that to your friends and community members as possible, as much as you want. I mean,
I understand why the police are uncomfortable about it, right? Because they are trained to be paranoid that people are out to get them. And in some cases, people are out to get them, right? There are some people who are out to harm the police. So I don't blame them for being jumpy about, like, if you've ever gotten behind a police officer before, they get real jumpy in a lot of cases because they don't want you, walking up on them and
stabbing them,
doing something, grabbing
do something
their
bad.
gun or whatever it is that they're worried about is going to happen. So they always want to have their eyes on, people, and that's why they get real nervous about something like that happening. So again, that's why you do have to be cautious when you are approaching an officer in
And it seems like
way.
8 feet. And I don't know whether they're, the law is probably pretty specific. They just say 8 feet in the article because an article is not law and all that. But I mean, are they talking about 8 feet from where the phone is that I'm holding to the officer's butt, or exactly what is measured? Because if it's from my body to his body, and then I've got another foot and a half on my phone, now we're down to 6.5 feet. That's not that far.
What happens if he takes a step towards you? Then what?
It's a very good question. And then what happens if the environment doesn't allow 8 feet? I do tend to think 8 feet is probably pretty close to a situation, and you can't even get good video if you're too close.
You would be able to. You would be able to record better the closer you are. Typically.
Yeah, what if you need to show somebody's face bleeding while he's holding their face on the cement ground?
What if you want to get the officer's name tag or something like that? And the fact is, if you're trying to zoom in on things from a distance, you might be able to pull it off, but the more zoomed you are, the more shaky the camera is, and it's very hard to actually get a good shot from a distance at a zoom. But we'll find out why this was apparently frozen and or overturned by a judge in Arizona coming up here in moments. It is Free Talk Live.
Don't worry about things you can't control. Isn't that what they always say? But it's about impossible to avoid worrying about what's going on these days. The government has used the war on guns, the war on drugs, and the war on terrorism to tear our Bill of Rights to shreds. But you can fight back. The 10th Amendment Center has proven it, racking up major victories. For example, when the U.S. government claimed authority in the NDAA to have the military kidnap and detain Americans without trial, the nullifiers got a law passed in California, declaring the state's refusal to ever participate in any such thing. Their latest project is offnow.org, nullifying the National Security Agency. They've already gotten model legislation introduced in California, Arizona, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas, meant to limit the power of the NSA to spy on Americans in those states. We'd be fools to wait around for the U.S. Congress or courts to roll back Big Brother. Our best chance is nullification and interposition on the state level. Go to offnow.org, print out that model legislation, and get to work nullifying the NSA. The hero Edward Snowden has risked everything to give us this chance. Let's take it. Offnow.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Bank of England says it will not hesitate to raise interest rates in the country in a bid to control inflation. The bank released a statement in the aftermath of the collapse in the value of sterling. It fell overnight in Asia to its lowest rate against the US dollar in more than 50 years, before making a slight recovery on European markets. The UK government, under fire for proposing sweeping tax cuts to stimulate the economy, is promising to set out a medium-term fiscal strategy in late November. Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition, spoke at the annual Labour Party conference.
This is investors taking decisions that are going to have an impact. They're going to impact those nurses, those teachers, because this will mean mortgage rates going up, prices going up, making a bad situation even worse than it is.
And several British financial institutions have now withdrawn mortgage products, citing what they called marketplace conditions. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had her first call today with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Downing Street says she thanked the controversial Saudi royal for his role securing the release last week of 5 Britons held by pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. At least one of them was facing the death penalty. In central Russia today, deadly violence at a school in the city of Izhevsk. 11 children were among 15 people killed by a gunman who was wearing combat fatigues emblazoned with a swastika. He later killed himself at the scene. FSN's Stuart Smith in Moscow on the investigation.
Russian Federal Investigative Committee, which looks into all major incidents like this, say they are investigating the potential motivations. One of the lines of inquiry relates to the fact that indeed a swastika was found on his clothing, so they are looking into his adherence to neo-fascist views and Nazi ideology.
Former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. The news was disclosed in a Russian government gazette today. Snowden has sought refuge in Russia since 2013 from espionage charges that he's facing in the United States. The stage is set in Italy for the country's first woman prime minister. Giorgia Meloni will lead a far-right coalition, according to projected results of the weekend's election. She's vowing to govern in the interests of all Italians. But Alessandro Speziale, Rome bureau chief for Bloomberg, says her election ushers in an era of uncertainty in relations between Italy and the EU.
She doesn't want to leave the EU. She doesn't want to leave the euro. She knows that this would not be accepted by most Italians. She wants to defend more strongly, more vigorously, what she says is the national interest within the EU. We're going to see how this plays out and whether she decides to stick with Italy's traditional allies, France and Germany, or whether she sides with Eastern European countries like Hungary and Poland.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us right here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can also join us anytime you want on our social media platform. You can go to social.freetalklive.com, and you can interact with other Free Talk Live listeners there, as well as some of the hosts of the show. That is our platform. We run the server, so it's our rules. And our rules say you get way more freedom to express yourself there than you do on the mega corporate big tech platforms out there that don't want your opinions if you care about liberty. We do. So go over to social.freetalklive.com. Ian, Bonnie, and Mark here in the studio tonight. Bonnie, you were telling us, just beginning to tell us the background and the updates here on what's been going on in Arizona, where they had passed a law that is sort of like a police protection from any accountability law, or at least some accountability, meaning that people are prohibited, or were until a judge made a recent decision, people are being prohibited from recording the police at a distance of 8 feet or less. Now, as I recall from when we were talking about this when it was being passed, there was a exemption to it, meaning that if you were in your own home, I believe they exempted people from that, so it was only intended for like in the streets kind of recording.
Okay.
Because obviously, like you were saying, Mark, if you're in a circumstance, a situation where you have to be within 8 feet of this person, then you should still have the right to record them.
I mean, there are still places outside of your home where you kind of have to be within 8 feet of a person to film them. Like I went to go film our friend Lumpy yelling at the thieves, I don't know what they are, that were threatening us, saying that we needed a permit. He went to go yell at them, so me and the 11-year-old cop block boy wonder, who's like 18 now, we went to go film him, and the cops got called because these weren't cops, they were enforcement people, and that room we were all in with like, I don't know, there ended up being like 10 people in it. You had to be at least 8 feet away from a cop, and we were filming them. And
where was this?
It's like the top floor of City Hall.
Oh, I remember that.
And that room's not very big, and there ended up being like 10 people in it at one time. In fact, me and Mikey went to stand behind a cop because he kept standing behind us, and we told him 6 feet. And the cop didn't like us standing behind him at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's uncomfortable when somebody who you know is potentially a violent lunatic is standing outside of your vision, and they could do all manner of harm to you. So, yeah, you want to have those people within your vision.
I don't think of cops as violent lunatics, but I do know that they're not. Well, so everybody is, right? But the cop
more so than others
is not going to be held responsible.
That's
so
true.
it's not that the cop is, like, as a person, more likely to be violent.
I think they are.
I think they are after June 2020.
The reason is because they're not going to be held responsible for their actions in the same way.
And that attracts a certain kind of person.
And especially now, the people who have quit the police forces in the last 2 years are only the psychotic, order-following worst ones now.
The ones who quit or the ones who haven't quit?
The only ones who haven't quit. The ones that are
From
there
when?
now.
What's the time period that's
From
relevant?
2020, when everybody was like, we hate cops now, stop being ruthless, horrible, killing people, and then a bunch of people quit. And then also they had to get these mandates to take vaccines, and a lot of them, the only like good people who wouldn't want to force that on people are people who would, not want to take it themselves, and all those people quit. I'm pretty sure that the herd has been culled, and only the really bad people, the bad apples, are like the only ones left.
I can see the point you're making on somebody being more willing to less willing to enforce a medical mandate on people if they chose not to have it themselves. However, I would say that many people would just got it because they had to, including police. But one of the things that comes up to mind here is like the cops watching their own, office burn. Like if you hire paramilitary troops, the one thing they should be able to do is protect their building. Right? Like this is
Minneapolis?
Yeah, this is a breathtaking failure as far as I'm concerned. We armed you with the best equipment. We gave you the best compensation that we could give you. You signed up to be the tip of the spear of the force of the state, you let a bunch of looters set your place on fire?
Numbers are numbers.
Yeah, they were
there was only
serious.
50 cops in that building, and there were 500 or 1,000 people outside. That's a tough, it's a tough ratio.
I think they were
defend.
given orders to not protect their building, but it certainly makes them look bad. Like literally, how would you have felt if the police came out and pop, 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 laid out 5 people?
That'd be really bad.
Why would you think that was bad? I mean, they've got Molotov cocktails and they threw them at our building.
I don't know what the order of operations was for how things went
I know
down
that
there.
a Molotov cocktail hit a building. I watched it happen.
That might have been after the police left.
How did it burn? Why did they leave?
I don't remember what the story was, but they were scared, obviously. There was a large, angry group of people
What
outside.
you tell a soldier is, this is your flag. You fight for this flag. You defend this ground. Your blood and your honor belongs here. And
I'm pretty sure they told them
at
to
that.
stand down. I'm not trying to defend the police. I don't mind thinking that they're pussies, but also I think that they ran away. I don't know. They run away whenever there are shooters in school buildings too. They are pussies. Yeah. They're just that's why they joined the police, because they were the bullied losers and they feel useless and they want to have some power over other people. That's absolutely why people join the police.
Yeah, they're
including
always
women.
tough guys when they're majority. As soon as the numbers flip against them, they change how they behave. And we saw that happen here in Keene, where there weren't angry people. There were, some people were upset, but there were people smoking pot in Central Square, and the cops couldn't do anything about that against 150 people because they just don't have the numbers to do it.
But the main thing is, I think they got told to stand down because these people were protesting the murder of one person. They weren't going to look any better if they went and shot 5 people or whatever you were talking about because their stupid building was getting caught on fire.
Look, if you came to my house and my family was at threat.
It's not their house or their family.
I understand that it wasn't their house and their family. How do you know it wasn't kids at work day? And how do we know those protesters didn't? How did those protesters know they weren't harming innocent people in that building?
I don't know, man. You're taking me back 2 years.
I don't think cops are really innocent people,
It's
period.
not fresh on my mind, so I can't tell you what the order of events was back then. I don't think it's fair to ask all these questions.
It sounds like McVeigh here on the radio. I'd say go out and defend your building. If you've been hired...
Why? It's just a building.
It's not even their building.
Yeah, well, then why take the paycheck? Because you take the paycheck. That's why you should do it.
That's why they want to stay alive, so they can keep taking a paycheck. They're not there to die for a damn building. They are there to keep getting money from the state. And if there's 1,000 angry people outside, they're going to hightail it the hell out of there.
And that's what it demonstrates, Ian. It demonstrates that they're there for money from the state, not to do a job to protect you or even their own building.
No doubt.
How do you think they're going to protect you? They didn't even protect their own building.
They know they're going to get another
building. And I'll give you an
building.
example. If there was rioters in my old town where I was a firefighter, and we could come out with hoses, I'd have defended my fire station from rioters.
Okay.
Sure. They sure wouldn't have thrown Molotov cocktails.
It from 1,000 of them.
Well, if you've got superior forces.
You and a fire hose isn't going to keep back 1,000 rioters.
It'll keep back a lot of people. Yeah, it will.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I'm sorry. You're going to be overwhelmed by numbers. And those guys, those cops, I'm not defending what they did, but what they did was they ran out of a situation that was completely untenable for them. They did what they had to do to leave.
They get hazard pay for a reason. And that reason is so that at the very least they can defend their own building.
They know they're going to get another building, so why bother?
Well, I don't even get paid, but I didn't even get paid by the fire department, and I would have stood there. Let them harm me. Bring on the rioters.
Die because of some angry rioters over a fire department?
Well, then the rioters might actually get some recompense for the whole situation. Sure. If that was important to me, I would, yeah.
I'd say the rioters were more in the right than the people who killed George Floyd, so I don't really feel like they deserve to get killed over breaking a stupid
building. The rioters are just
building.
a bunch of a-holes burning a city because they had an opportunity to.
Well, the rioters were different. They're individuals, and Mark, you cannot make a statement.
Individual bullets will kill individual people.
If I was in the moment and thought that we could take down the city government, I can see myself getting in the mindset that those people were in. I don't think they're all just dumb criminals.
More coming up. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means, stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to MyMagicMud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. MyMagicMud.com, FTL20.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show if you dial in 603-283-6160. Bring up whatever you want. Apparently, a judge in Arizona has frozen enforcement of a law that would have prevented people from recording the police in a relatively close fashion, less than 8 feet away. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up here tonight. It's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Mark.
And I do want to thank Damian Williams, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. And thank you to what is now over 100 listeners who have signed up for our new AMPS Patreon. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. It's a way for you to help us get the word out about the ideas of liberty. So if you like what we do here, then please join AMPS. You do get access to the commercial-free, there's recorded commercial-free archives of the show, the full radio show without any cuts besides removing the commercials. You get those if you are a member of the AMPS program, and there's some other perks that you get as well. So go to amps.freetalklive.com. That'll take you right over to our Patreon, where you can get signed up. That's amps.freetalklive.com. As we go to Penguin, he's on the line in Virginia. Go ahead, Penguin.
Hey guys, it's great to hear Mark on the air. I'm glad to hear you on now. And also congratulations to Ian and Bonnie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What's on your mind tonight, Penguin?
I want to talk about something that Mark addressed last night about New Hampshire and the freedom migration movement there. I mean, it certainly takes on a certain character based on the movers and the kind of people who planned out the migration. And it's pretty good diversity of types of people. But like Mark said, you can't make a place that's free for everyone. You can't provide everyone with freedom because there's so many different ideas of what freedom is. I mean, there is a certain kind of libertarian ideal that you guys talk on the show, but like beyond that, the NAP is good, but beyond that, there are things.
The NAP is the non-aggression principle.
Yes. And that people hold things to be very dear and important principles to them, and that they would not, compromise them in the name of freedom, or they see those things as a direct threat or a form of aggression. So, like, you're going to have people that are not going. This idea of freedom is that they don't have, sexual teaching, the state teaching sexual stuff in the schools, or puberty blockers being, as recommended by school counselors or something. And some people will say that's exactly what we want, and we don't want anybody to curtail that, or that some people's idea of freedom is that they are free from the risk of like medical bankruptcy in the case of a catastrophic illness or injury.
Sure, some people on the left believe that freedom means freedom from want, freedom from having to work. freedom from having to take care of themselves. So yes, you're right. There are definitely a lot.
The thing that the people on the right keep bringing up in this sort of a conversation is what you brought up, the schools and what they teach and what the guidance counselors give the kids. But somebody who cares about freedom shouldn't want all of our kids in these public schools who, they have to learn the same thing. You should be able to choose what school your kids go to and not have the government indoctrinating them. So I just think that's just a moot point.
Well, you can choose where your kid goes to school. What you can't choose is whether or not you pay for the local government school. And by that, what I mean is the school, in 99% of the cases, that has the lowest performance in a given geographic area, whatever your school district is, and for the given grade. So, I'm sure that there's some charter schools, and I'm sure that there might even be a handful of public schools out there that are worse than the public school, the government school that's in a given area, but it's not likely.
Nope.
It's
because you can take your money away from those schools.
Highly likely that we're talking above 95% percentile here, that it's always the government school that's the worst one. And in many cases, you've got places where people literally can, like the poorest of neighborhoods where you're supposed to have the worst performers can send their kids to anywhere, and those schools still do better than the government school. And that's because in my opinion, it's because the government school teachers have been turned into bureaucrats in those areas, and they're far more worried about pensions and longevity in the job and a whole variety of things. And they stopped the love of teaching has kind of been sucked out.
Yeah, if you want to go there, then I have adopted basically your framework. It's for public schooling that it's so supremely important to kind of end this current system, the status quo system, and it's definitionally it's definitionally a right-wing position, technically speaking. It's not from a position of conservatism or religiosity. That I think it should be a universal position to do school choice, just school choice, market competition in school choice. And I think, like you said years ago, that really hit me. We deal with the idea of public funding later. We can alleviate the problem if we can, in the now, in this generation, right away, solve this problem, this pressing issue.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, is to get the government out of schools.
And the libertarians and
the kids.
The libertarians in the legislature in New Hampshire have made huge strides towards getting people to be able to choose where their kids go to school.
You mean the education savings accounts?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
And they did things with just laws about homeschooling, like they made it easier for people to be able to homeschool.
They have, yeah. The homeschooling community here in New Hampshire is very active. Whenever there's some sort of a threat to homeschooling from some new piece of legislation, basically all the homeschoolers have their kids, they take a field trip, they go to the state house, and they just pack into whatever hearing room they have, and the state reps don't want to go against what those, you get a bunch of kids and their parents in there, and they know they vote, so...
Yeah, I like the homeschool, the savings accounts things where, the idea, this is a step in the right direction going on in New Hampshire.
That's all it is, yeah.
Obviously, if you don't have kids, you're still paying in to send somebody's kids to some school, and I don't see any reason that you should have to do that.
That needs to be changed.
Yeah, the fact that somebody managed to push somebody else out of their womb does not obligate you to pay for anybody's particular schooling. But I get the idea, and I think these are steps in the right direction. I like school choice, and I like all this stuff.
Yeah, I do like choice. I like competition. I'm sad that it's so considered an idea in a certain direction, or a wacky idea, or idea that's so tied to the Republican Party. And I just think that's so contingent on, where we are in the society and the debates now. And really, but you get so much pushback and so much opposition and vitriol from the center left. The far left, they are so tied into this centralized public schooling and the idea that if you cannot get people to budge on this issue, and
I know it's crazy because the solution for yourself is just to withdraw from their system, to get away from it.
That's the easiest way.
And they just don't want you to, and it's amazing. Like you pick up and move, and you tell them on Facebook that you did it for these very reasons. They're like, ah!
Oh, yeah. They're fighting. The teachers' unions, for instance, are fighting the education savings accounts tooth and nail. They hate that people are voluntarily choosing not to send their kids to government schools, which is what this is a nice, it's like, I don't know what the word is. It's a relief valve, if you will. It's allowing people who've never been able to afford it to now take a few $1,000. I think it's like $4,000 or $5,000 is what they get. Essentially, the state cuts them a check, per year to either send their kids to a private school or they can buy homeschool curriculums.
But that same student costs like $16,000 to educate in the government school system.
In some towns.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge savings for the town.
The craziest thing to me is just that the only argument that the left has that we should only have public schools is, the poor people. And there's a solution. There's a solution that makes poor people more able to have the education of rich people, and the left is still pushing back against it. Like, they don't understand that because they were public school educated.
The answer is a means-based scholarship, but they don't want to hear about that. Because... Go ahead.
There's plenty of education to go around, and I just want to say real quick. In D.C., there is like charter schools and a school choice implemented in D.C., and plenty of lower income and African American people. The majority of the people benefiting from that are in those groups.
Indeed.
Thank you, Penguin, for the call tonight. Definitely appreciate you bringing that up. It is an important issue. It's one that needs to be looked at, and this is one of the reasons why the Free State Project is so important, is to get freedom-minded people who do understand that these issues matter and that educational freedom is one of the most critical issues, because if you allow the state to raise children, which is what's going on,
8 hours a day. That's raising kids.
Right. Your kids, if they're good, are sleeping for at least 8 hours a day, and then they're
Hopefully
in school.
9.
Right. Then they're in school for 8 roughly hours per day. They're moving to and from school for a half hour to an hour per day.
They're not even in close for 8 hours a day because the teachers unions advocated for shorter and shorter school years because they want longer and longer breaks for their teachers.
Okay, yeah, you're right. There's still some days where they're not there at all.
In some cases, yes, the government has the government should take responsibility. The leftists want the government to take responsibility for rearing people, but the teachers union doesn't really want that. They want the responsibility without having to do the work. But
the fact is, they're still being, whether it's 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever the average is per day that these kids are forced into these government schools, they're just being indoctrinated that whole time into pro-government, pro-state mindsets. And so getting your kids out is step number one, but also helping the people who don't have that awareness to escape from that system is something that we're having some success with, as you pointed out here, Bonnie, in New Hampshire, thanks to movements like the Free State Project that are encouraging freedom-loving individuals to move here and do something about it. Hour number 2 coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Bank of England says it will not hesitate to raise interest rates in the country in a bid to control inflation. The bank released a statement in the aftermath of the collapse in the value of sterling. It fell overnight in Asia to its lowest rate against the US dollar in more than 50 years, before making a slight recovery on European markets. The UK government, under fire for proposing sweeping tax cuts to stimulate the economy, is promising to set out a medium-term fiscal strategy in late November. Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition, spoke at the annual Labour Party conference.
This is investors taking decisions that are going to have an impact. They're going to impact those nurses, those teachers, because this will mean mortgage rates going up, prices going up, making a bad situation even worse than it is.
And several British financial institutions have now withdrawn mortgage products, citing what they called marketplace conditions. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had her first call today with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Downing Street says she thanked the controversial Saudi royal for his role securing the release last week of 5 Britons held by pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. At least one of them was facing the death penalty. In central Russia today, deadly violence at a school in the city of Izhevsk. 11 children were among 15 people killed by a gunman who was wearing combat fatigues emblazoned with a swastika. He later killed himself at the scene. FSN's Stuart Smith in Moscow on the investigation.
Russian Federal Investigative Committee, which looks into all major incidents like this, say they are investigating the potential motivations. One of the lines of inquiry relates to the fact that indeed a swastika was found on his clothing, so they are looking into his adherence to neo-fascist views and Nazi ideology.
Former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. The news was disclosed in a Russian government gazette today. Snowden has sought refuge in Russia since 2013 from espionage charges that he's facing in the United States. The stage is set in Italy for the country's first woman prime minister. Giorgia Meloni will lead a far-right coalition, according to projected results of the weekend's election. She's vowing to govern in the interests of all Italians. But Alessandro Speziale, Rome bureau chief for Bloomberg, says her election ushers in an era of uncertainty in relations between Italy and the EU.
She doesn't want to leave the EU. She doesn't want to leave the euro. She knows that this would not be accepted by most Italians. She wants to defend more strongly, more vigorously, what she says is the national interest within the EU. We're going to see how this plays out and whether she decides to stick with Italy's traditional allies, France and Germany, or whether she sides with Eastern European countries like Hungary and Poland.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration later this week is convening the first ever summit meeting of the United States and the Pacific Islands. It comes after China stole a march in a part of the world where the US has long historic ties. The wartime battles of Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands, for instance, are etched into American military history. But in April, China surprised Washington by signing a security pact with the Solomon Islands, and Washington has been playing catch-up ever since. Jim Lindsay is with the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations.
You reap what you sow. For about 30 years after 1990, the United States pretty much ignored the islands in the Southern Pacific. And I think what you see right now is an administration scrambling while there's a sudden understanding that we're in a rivalry, a competition with China. The amount that we're putting on the table compared to what the Chinese are doing with things like the Belt and Road Initiative are quite paltry. But I think what you're really seeing is an effort by this administration to sort of abide by the first rule of diplomacy, which is show interest in others, and to try to make the case to show that we care. Again, a lot of diplomacy really is about showing up.
And he says ahead of this week's summit, the Biden administration has not been able to indicate any specific deliverables expected to arise from it. The main news again, the Bank of England says it will not hesitate to raise interest rates in a bid to control inflation. The announcement came after sterling took a battering in Asian markets. In the central Russian city of Izhevsk, 11 children were among 15 people killed by a gunman wearing combat fatigues emblazoned with a swastika. And former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Hello, this is anchor Doyle Redland. I have just been informed that my 40-year contract with the Onion Radio News expired 2 minutes ago. A brief extension has been added to my contract to allow me to say goodbye to you, my faceless listeners. I've been reading the news out loud on the air for a very long time now, and the words to describe my feelings are difficult to find. Steve, what are you doing? This is my big moment.
I'm getting the word now that you have to leave the studio right now.
But where will I go?
Now.
Well, goodbye, everyone. I'm just coming back for my hat. No, it's my hat. I just need it and I'll go. There's no need to get pushy. Moose! Rocco, I thought we were friends.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever you want here. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We've been telling you about Bullion Max as a great location to go and get yourself some precious metals, gold and silver. You know that precious metals have been a great hedge against inflation for, well, basically as long as inflation has been around. Precious metals, they've got a great history, and you can get yours direct from bullionmax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Now, not all precious metals are about just storing them in a safe and sitting on them. That's the old way of doing things. The new way is the gold back. And we're huge fans of goldbacks here. In fact, Bonnie and I, we were just using and sharing goldbacks with people over the weekend at a local event. People were just going crazy over them. They loved them. And that's because they are amazingly beautiful, interchangeable gold money that you can carry in your wallet. So you can actually spend gold for the first time in generations, basically. This is incredibly useful technology here.
And almost everybody gets it right away. It's not like Bitcoin where you have to explain it.
You don't have to explain it beyond just saying, hey, this is 1/1000th of an ounce of gold. This is what it's worth. Boom. And so you can go and get yours at bullionmax.com/FTL. If you go to bullionmax.com/FTL, it will take you straight to their goldback sales page. Keep in mind, the Wyoming goldbacks just came out. And if they're anything like all the other previous goldbacks that have come out, like the Utah and the New Hampshire and the Nevadas, they're going to go fast.
I didn't know that Wyoming had one out. I'm pretty excited.
Oh, man, you missed out. The captain had them with him over the weekend.
I think
maybe
they're
it was Saturday, though.
Some of the prettiest ones.
They're gorgeous. They're all gorgeous.
Why are they all Western state? How come they aren't servicing us Eastern states?
New Hampshire's got them, dude.
I know New Hampshire does, but
you can do it too if you've got
Because they're out west. Because they're from Utah.
If you've got some money, you can actually get in touch with the goldback people directly
and say, "Hey, let's do my state."
Yeah, you can.
You love your state, whatever your state might be.
You can essentially kickstart a state, but the more populated a state is, the more expensive it is to do it. So
why?
That's
because you'll make more money.
I don't know if there's money to be made in it. I'm not sure about that, but in theory, there would be more orders for a state that has more population, so they have to have more inventory basically to support that. But anyway, that's not what Bullion Max does. They'll just sell them to you. You can go to bullionmax.com/FTL and get some goldbacks there, including the brand new Wyomings, and they do have some quantity purchases that you can make through them as well. All right, so let's see. Bonnie, you were just beginning to tell us about this story involving Arizona, a law that prohibited people from recording the police in a close proximity, but it's been frozen by a judge.
Yep. This is from Al Jazeera. This was written September 9th. It says, a federal judge in the United States has blocked enforcement of a new Arizona law restricting how the public and journalists can film police agreeing with the American Civil Liberties Union and multiple media organizations who argued it violated the First Amendment. U.S. District Judge John T. Tucci on Friday issued a preliminary injunction that stopped the law from being enforced when it is set to take effect on September 24th.
Oh, wow. That's nice. So they actually stopped it before it even went into place. Good move.
The quick decision came after Republican Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich and the prosecutor and sheriff's office in Maricopa County told the judge that they did not plan to defend the law. They were named as defendants in a lawsuit filed last month.
Wow.
Well, the state's attorney or whatever, the attorney general didn't pass the law. That was the legislature.
But usually the attorney general does the legislature's bidding, and they will defend. You know, they'll go and argue for it. It's amazing to me that the attorney general wouldn't even argue to try to defend this law. They just knew on its face that it was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
It says that it was enacted because of a Republican-controlled legislature and signed by Republican Governor Doug Ducey on July 6th.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it illegal to knowingly film police officers at 2.5 meters or 8 feet or closer if the officer tells the person to stop. On private property, an officer who decides someone is interfering or the area is unsafe can order the person to stop filming even if the recording is being made with the owner's permission.
Wait, on private property, the cop can still order someone to stop. Wow. Okay, I thought they had a carve-out for private property. I guess I was wrong.
If they decide it's interfering with their police action.
Which they always will. There's very little chance that an officer is going to say that it's fine if he knows he can order someone to stop recording. They want no accountability. They do not want a third party there keeping them accountable for their actions with video.
Says the penalty was going to be a misdemeanor that would likely incur a fine without jail time.
And it would allow whoever has a video camera to be manhandled and arrested and have their camera footage taken, potentially deleted. There's a lot of consequences here, even though it's just a misdemeanor with no jail time. That's what they want, is they want you, if you have a video camera, to be gone from the scene. And that's why they will turn and send police after you. Even without these laws in place, police are known for harassing these people. They are like, you could be on I've seen people not within 8 feet, but I've seen them like across a street from a situation, and I've seen police make a beeline for them.
Oh, sure.
And just start lying to them about, you can't be here, and you need our permission to record, and just making crap up just to try to intimidate this person into stopping recording and or going away. I've seen it happen.
And has anyone you've ever known that wasn't doing anything like wrong said that they really didn't want to be filmed, I don't know, in public? I guess people think that it's illegal to just be filmed in public
Some
sometimes.
people don't want to be recorded.
Yeah.
They just don't.
They don't want to, but they don't realize that anyone can record them in public.
They get angry about it.
Dumb type of person.
And I won't do it. I won't record those people unless they're like being abused or something in the moment, like physically, and then I feel obligated to. But if
well, at the very least, you can film them being physically abused, and then if they don't want to that film to be released or whatever, then I guess you can erase it or send it to them or whatever.
No, at that point, I'm not going to do anything that they ask me to. But generally, if I come onto a scene, if I am, out doing cop block or whatever you want to call it, police accountability stuff, I will ask the person. I will say, if they're being pulled over, I'll say, hey, is it okay if we record this? And sometimes people will say no, and I'll just leave. Like, if you don't want somebody watching the situation, okay, I got other things I can be doing.
Yeah, I've seen First Amendment auditors that stay and they complain to the people like, we're protecting you. And it's just like, at that point, you're making yourself look kind of bad. And
I think you can say it, but, let them go on.
Yeah.
Whatever. People make their decisions for a variety of reasons, and some of those decisions are good, and some of those decisions are bad. Yeah. And you just have to let people make their own. What is it? Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment.
Yeah, I think some people don't want to. They're worried that their family's going to see them, or they just don't want their face out there in the media.
Their family's going to find out already that you were arrested and beaten up.
Being pulled over or something like that. Yep. They're embarrassed about what they did, and they don't want any extra attention brought to it.
Or they just literally think it's illegal to film me in public because they are dumb, and lots of people think that.
Some people love the police.
It wasn't about people being arrested. My point was more, have you ever been doing your job and thought, if somebody started recording me right now, that'd be really bad. Like, have you ever been doing a job so badly that you needed to, like, intimidate someone if you saw them with a video camera? You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm getting recorded every single night here, so I'm used to being... I mean, I've screwed up many a times on camera, and there's just no undoing it.
My point was just, it looks really bad when police officers just cannot have themselves doing their public job in public that's supposed to be defending people recorded. That's just a bad,
But
sign.
we know they're not defending people. They're offending people. And
the premise is that in the First Amendment that we the people are the press and a whole variety of things. So if we have to pay the salaries, then we should be able to. I like the term First Amendment auditors. I think that's a really good thing because that's what they are.
That's what they're doing.
Now, frankly, the United States is a lot better than a lot of places around the world when it comes to this sort of thing. But, if that's what you want to spend your time doing, feel free.
So, good news is this thing has been frozen, and not even the Attorney General or the Sheriff of Maricopa County, one of the most corrupt positions that there have been in the past, as far as Joe Arpaio is concerned, they're not even willing to defend it. So, I would say this thing is dead in the water. It doesn't even sound like they're going to appeal. More coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You can't win if you don't enter, and you actually can improve your chances of winning a prize drawing if you wrinkle up your entry blank. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com, and I speak from experience. Why this works: if they'll be spinning the drum before drawing, your entry blank will move around more than, and not adhere to, other perfectly flat entry blanks. And if they don't spin the drum and merely reach into a box full of other perfectly flat entry blanks, many of which are sticking together, yours will feel different to the person reaching in. When you win, act surprised. And if you're looking for work, this is a metaphor. For more tips on sticking out in a world where just too much blends into the blah, 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 hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone? You forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection, you can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight is Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Mark.
And coming up in about a month, a little less than a month from now, Mark is going to be in Prague for an upcoming conference. It is the second year of this conference. Mark, did you attend the first one?
I did, but it wasn't in Prague. It was in Switzerland.
Right. And is the reason they went to Prague for this because there aren't any vaccination requirements to get in there?
I don't know the answers to that.
I've heard that rumor about that area. But anyway, it's October 21st through the 23rd. The Free Cities Foundation is going to be having their conference called Liberty in Our Lifetime, but the conference theme this year is Parallel Structures for Progress. They're going to explore physical developments and parallel structures emerging in education and finance that offer alternatives for people looking for better ways to learn, educate their children, and invest in their future. You can still get the 20% discount by using FTL20 as your promo code when you check out through lifetimeliberty.com. That's code FTL20. By the way, the early bird discount ends October 3rd. So don't wait. If you're planning on going, you should be getting things together now, right? Like now's the time to get the tickets, get your airline reserved. Don't wait much longer. Lifetimeliberty.com, code FTL20 saves you 20%. And I believe that is on top of the early bird discount.
Right.
Yeah. So get an extra bonus savings because you are a Free Talk Live listener with code FTL20 at lifetimeliberty.com, October 21st through the 23rd. Mark is going to be speaking. Do you have a topic?
And I'd love to see you there.
Do you have a topic yet, Mark? Do you know what you're going to talk about?
Going to be talking about locating liberty.
Okay, excellent. I'm
How
sure
to find it.
There are a bunch of people there that are interested in that, so check it out at lifetimeliberty.com. We're going to continue here. Mark, you've got a statistic poll of some sort that you want to share with us tonight about what Americans believe about the future of the strength, if you will, of America, the influence, what's the exact statement here that you want to share with us?
Well, there's actually several of them here that I think are worth talking about, but 40% of Americans think a civil war is likely, at least either very or somewhat likely, between Republicans and Democrats.
Oh, they actually asked them who the opponents would be? Because we've heard the 40% number. That's not new. There have been a few different polls, I think, that have thrown that out there. But no one has I've never seen anybody ask the question of, well, who's fighting in this civil war? So they actually think people are going to square off Republicans versus Democrats. It's going to be a slaughter. I mean, the Republicans are going to just...
Which side has guns is the question you need to ask yourself. But the Democrats have bought more guns in the last decade or so than they've had in my lifetime. They were like, those Republicans are very likely. Because if you're a Democrat and you believe that there's going to be a civil war between Republicans and Democrats,
you better arm up.
You had better arm up. Now, I don't believe that.
I wonder if they're as likely to go out to a range and practice.
Practice is what matters, right? Like the first thing that matters is to have the gun. The second thing that matters is to be able to use it.
Yeah, if you've never shot the gun, you're done. You're not going to...
I'm not saying you're done, but you're better off than the guy who doesn't have it. But it's a really good idea to practice with it. Yeah. Let me read the little preamble here because there's some really interesting statistics in this one. I think it's very interesting.
And this is from YouGov?
Yeah, today.yougov.com. 2 in 5 Americans believe a civil war is at least somewhat likely in the U.S. within the next decade, according to recent polling by The Economist and YouGov. So not a bunch of libertarian extremists here. But what exactly do Americans think a second American Civil War would look like? Among 15 potential future scenarios involving instability or political violence, the one that most Americans consider likely in the next decade is that the U.S. ceases to be a global superpower. 50% of Americans say that the U.S. is going to cease to be a global superpower, followed by a total collapse of the U.S. economy.
Really?
47%. Now, I mean,
wow.
I don't, just because they say it doesn't mean it's so, but it's scary.
Now, I presume, I don't know if they get into this, but I presume this is going to break down on partisan lines, meaning that Republicans probably greater believe that the economy is going to fail because the Democrats couldn't possibly believe that their man Biden and their lady Kamala and the heroic Dems in Washington, D.C. would ever do anything to put the economy in shambles.
There will be a total economic collapse. Democrats 38%.
Okay, so what is Republicans 60?
So that's 2 in 5, and Republicans 65%. Okay. That's 2 in 3.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, it does break down along political lines, but the U.S. will no longer be a global superpower. Which one is that?
Which one what?
Democrats or Republicans?
Democrats.
Republicans.
See? 55 and 56. Same.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
almost nothing.
That's interesting. Now, what is that going to look like if that actually comes to be? Because right now you've got the U.S. military with hundreds of bases, 700 to 1,000. I don't remember what the current number is, but somewhere in that range.
Yes.
Located all over the planet.
More than 500 military bases outside the United States.
Yeah, with like few exceptions, right? There's probably not one in North Korea, but there's in a lot of countries, the U.S. has some sort of facility. And I mean, even in Cuba, right? There's a Guantanamo Bay's down there.
If you consider that in Cuba, yep.
It's run by the military, right? And
well, no, I'm not saying it's not run by the military. I'm saying, is it in Cuba?
Well, now you're talking about political lines. I mean, it's on the island, right?
Yeah, it's on the island of Cuba.
So, you've got these things everywhere. The U.S. military is the world's arguably most powerful military force. What circumstances could lead to this coming true? If 50+% of Americans are believing that America will no longer be a global superpower, how will we get from here to there? It sounds to me, I'm just going to guess here, it sounds to me like economic calamity is the only path that could get us to there.
I think Americans are seeing that Joe Biden, as much as he may want Vladimir Putin to not have invaded Ukraine, for whatever the reasons, I'm not taking, I'm not making a value statement on it, but they know that Biden doesn't want that to have happened. And they see the impotence of the United States government in this arena. Like the United States government is not or cannot or something is not stopping Russia from invading Ukraine. Now, Ukraine appears to be, but to some extent they pushed them back.
That's what the mainstream media says.
Well, they pushed them back a bit. I mean, who knows? Who knows? Again, where am I supposed to get news from if I'm not getting it from the mainstream media?
You can get your opinions from RT and then at least get the other side of the story, whatever the truth happens to be.
I expect RT to lie about things that involve with Russia, and I never look at RT when it has anything to do with Russia. I mean,
well, you might as well be looking at the Ukrainian media if you're looking at United States media. I feel like it's just as bad either way.
I think that the answer is you cannot really know. You can get opinions from various places, but you have no idea what's really happening.
Yeah, and if you care enough, I just don't. I mean, I don't want people to die, but my opinion doesn't matter. And I have been an anti-war activist for well over a decade, and the conclusion that I've come to is there is nothing I can do except withdraw my consent and my money from a given war. That the war machine rages on, and that my opinion is irrelevant to it.
So what is it going to look like when or if the U.S. government, I think it's a when, it's just whether it's within the next 10 years or 20 or whatever, the U.S. is
200, 2,000.
Yeah, the U.S. is no longer an economic superpower or a global military superpower. What's that look like? How do we get from here to there? It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Bank of England says it will not hesitate to raise interest rates in the country in a bid to control inflation. The bank released a statement in the aftermath of the collapse in the value of sterling. It fell overnight in Asia to its lowest rate against the US dollar in more than 50 years, before making a slight recovery on European markets. The UK government, under fire for proposing sweeping tax cuts to stimulate the economy, is promising to set out a medium-term fiscal strategy in late November. Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition, spoke at the annual Labour Party conference.
This is investors taking decisions that are going to have an impact. They're going to impact those nurses, those teachers, because this will mean mortgage rates going up, prices going up, making a bad situation even worse than it is.
And several British financial institutions have now withdrawn mortgage products, citing what they called marketplace conditions. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had her first call today with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Downing Street says she thanked the controversial Saudi royal for his role securing the release last week of 5 Britons held by pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. At least one of them was facing the death penalty. In central Russia today, deadly violence at a school in the city of Izhevsk. 11 children were among 15 people killed by a gunman who was wearing combat fatigues emblazoned with a swastika. He later killed himself at the scene. FSN's Stuart Smith in Moscow on the investigation.
Russian Federal Investigative Committee, which looks into all major incidents like this, say they are investigating the potential motivations. One of the lines of inquiry relates to the fact that indeed a swastika was found on his clothing, so they are looking into his adherence to neo-fascist views and Nazi ideology.
Former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. The news was disclosed in a Russian government gazette today. Snowden has sought refuge in Russia since 2013 from espionage charges that he's facing in the United States. The stage is set in Italy for the country's first woman prime minister. Giorgia Meloni will lead a far-right coalition, according to projected results of the weekend's election. She's vowing to govern in the interests of all Italians. But Alessandro Speziale, Rome bureau chief for Bloomberg, says her election ushers in an era of uncertainty in relations between Italy and the EU.
She doesn't want to leave the EU. She doesn't want to leave the euro. She knows that this would not be accepted by most Italians. She wants to defend more strongly, more vigorously, what she says is the national interest within the EU. We're going to see how this plays out and whether she decides to stick with Italy's traditional allies, France and Germany, or whether she sides with Eastern European countries like Hungary and Poland.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you're invited if you want to join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Mark.
Don't forget, you can join us online. Just head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the various features that we have waiting for you there. All of those things are free at freetalklive.com, so please enjoy archives and interactions with other Free Talk Live listeners and some of the hosts head over to freetalklive.com. You can do a lot of stuff there that the other shows charge you for. We go to your phone calls and thoughts. More about the U.S. government, perhaps, if 50% of Americans are to be believed, will have no superpower status within the next decade. And that sounds pretty optimistic to me. But first, let's go to... Yeah, I think that's great news. If it could be true, I would love for it to be that fast. 10 years, that's right around the corner.
I don't support that. And the reason is because superpowers, the lack of a superpower leaves a vacuum for the next superpower. And it's not like China is going to just not fill that space.
Well, we can talk about that here in a little bit, but of course your calls and thoughts are welcome. Ryan is on the line in New Hampshire. Ryan, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, gang.
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
I just wanted to share a quick anecdote that happened to me this weekend. I thought you might find it interesting. So I took my kid to soccer practice on Saturday, and then we had a little time to kill afterward. And so I'm here in Amherst, New Hampshire. So we swung over to the library. I figured I could entertain him for a little bit there. So we went down to the kid area, and I was just letting him browse through books and trying to convince him to let me read him a book and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I hear some gal, and she's giving a speech, and it's just it's out of sight. I can't visually see, but I'm starting to overhear it, and something piques my interest. All of a sudden I hear her warning about Punisher emblems on the back of vehicles, and how this could be dangerous. So that piqued my curiosity. I was thinking, what's this lady fear-mongering about, right? Like, who knows why somebody'd have a Punisher thing on? They could be a comic book fan, they like the movie, whatever,
They could be a cop. They may be...
There's a strong likelihood that they are, have worked for the United States military and carried a gun for them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, who knows, right? There could be a number of reasons. But so I'm just trying to figure out what this is all about. So I start trying to eavesdrop a bit. And then next thing I know, and she's going off about a number of topics. She references something called an appeal to heaven and other dangerous, dangerous
symbols,
dog whistles, or whatever you want to. Yes, yeah, different references. And then she says, and I don't remember exactly what she said, but she said something about, and you need to watch out for local folks running for state rep who are free staters, right? So she's looped this all. She's got free staters. She mentioned 3%ers, and she's going off. And this is the tail end of the talk. So I really didn't know what the heck she was talking about, other than she was warning about a number of things. So. But now this is the punchline, right? This is what might blow your mind. Is when I went home, I was curious about what this talk might have been, so I start researching it. I went to the Amherst Library page to see what was on the schedule. I might have missed it, but I didn't actually see anything. But I started Googling around, and because I got her name.
Karen?
Her name was Sarah from Granite State Progress. And so I Google Sarah, Granite State Progress, Amherst Library, something like that, trying to find it. And then I find an article from Patch.com, which is a local publication, and I find the event. This is 100% the event, mind you, because the location, the date, and the time are all there. So this is the title of the event in which she was warning against free staters. The title of the talk was Understanding the White Supremacist Threats to Democracy in New Hampshire.
Wow.
Ooh. And how well attended was this event?
For a public library event, it wasn't bad. There was, but that's not saying much. There was probably between 12 and 20 people there. Okay. Probably.
Would you describe most of the attendees as over the age of 60?
I don't know if that was an average, but there certainly were a number that fit that demographic. A lot of mask wearers were coming out, because
I'd wear a mask too if I was going to some political event. Who wants to have your your identity known? I think this is the same kind of dirty pool that Democrats all over play, right? Like, they can't just say these people disagree with us politically.
No, they can't fight our ideas.
They have to say they're evil at the highest level of evil. Like, they can't go from, just gradually work their way up and then find the, white supremacists, because there's surely some white supremacists in New Hampshire, right?
Probably somewhere, yeah.
No doubt about it. And some of them maybe they're probably I'm guessing a white supremacist, an out one, the one you think of, that kind of thing, vote Republican. And
Good
so I can
chance
see
of it, yeah.
Yeah. Now, honestly, I believe the Democrats are the white supremacists, because they're the ones who believe that for whatever reason ethnic people cannot rise up through the ranks like every other social class, every other ethnic group has in the United States, from the Germans, the Irish, the Italians, and whomever have throughout the years. But somehow the black folks can't do it, or the Mexicans can't do it, or whomever can't do it. So
they need our help, say the Democrats.
Right, and that's a white supremacist, mind you.
Yeah.
But whatever, there certainly are people that would burn a cross on somebody's lawn, and I think that's who they're talking about. And it seems likely that those people would prefer a Republican candidate over a Democratic one. But that's what they want to make everybody out as. Like, if you value human freedom and you value people being able to make their own decisions in their lives and not being able to being corralled like human cattle into whatever social program you want them into, well, they must be a white supremacist, because everybody I disagree with is Hitler.
I actually heard something, Ryan, and I don't know who was reporting on this. It was one of the, I think it was like the Free State Project Discord server. Somebody also came across one of these events. I don't know if it was the same one or a similar series being held at a different library. But he said that during the presentation, they actually put a slide up that said that Carla Gericke, who was the Free State Project president, is a white supremacist.
The anti-apartheid activist.
Yeah, from South Africa. And I've never heard I've spent a lot of time with Carla. I've never heard her utter such a word in any sort of racist
I would say the opposite.
manner. Yeah.
Quite the opposite.
Well, you should see the image that they have, and if you Google this, understanding the white supremacist threat to democracy in New Hampshire, patch.com, maybe you might be able to find it. But the image advertising this talk, I mean, it's over the top. And granted, I don't know exactly what she said about Free Staters the whole time, but I mean, it's got swastikas, it has Hitler. It's like the impression that this association would give you is just insane. And I'm really curious what she did say, because the way that she referenced Free Stater, it made me feel like she had referenced it before, because I feel like that's the type of term that to a public audience you would be not just using without a definition, because you would be probably correctly assuming that many wouldn't know what you're talking about. So the manner in which that she referenced the Free Staters, it definitely seemed like it had come up before, and she was just referencing.
Oh yeah, Granite State Progress is one of the hate groups. I mean, they hate Free State Project participants. They hate the Free State Project. The idea of libertarians migrating here, which is what the Free State Project is, migrating to New Hampshire. Ryan, thanks for calling and sharing that story with us. Definitely appreciate hearing from you. This is one example of how the people that are on the left specifically are losing their minds and are doing everything they can, pulling out all the stops to do a full-on attack against the Free Staters this year.
Free Talk Live.
Do you guys have a zombie plan? I'm just wondering what this country's going to do if we had some sort of apocalypse like that.
Like a zombie attack.
Do?
People coming out of the ground, like in Thriller, like in Michael Jackson's
like 28
Thriller.
days later, like a virus or something.
Oh, okay.
I mean, people don't come back to life.
Well, now, there are different kinds of zombies out there.
Now,
but let me go through the types of zombies. I mean, you've got the ones that can crawl out of the ground, right? And then she was talking about like an infection kind of zombie, like a la Resident Evil, for instance. So ideally, if you're going to have to perish at the hands of a zombie, which would be the preference? Would you prefer to have your brains eaten, or would you prefer to become one of them?
I think I'd rather just die. The last thing I'd want is, of course, the people you split up with. Then I'm talking my wife and my child. I'm coming back. I'm wanting to eat Laura's brains. bad. It's bad.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Mark.
Don't forget, you can join us online anytime you want. Just head over to freetalklive.com, and you can do that over there. You can get interactive in a variety of different ways. One of them is our chat server, the Matrix Chat. You can go to chat.freetalklive.com and get step-by-step instructions on how to join our Matrix server. It is yet another free feature and a very robust feature. You can interact not only in the official Free Talk Live related channels there, but also you can create your own channel if you want and have your own discussion with the people you want to talk to. And you can moderate the room however you want to, have the people in there that you want. People try to join you don't like, you can boot them right out if you want. It's up to you. You decide how to moderate your own channels there. Just go to chat.freetalklive.com. Again, to learn more about that, we just had a call from a gentleman who happened to be in a library in Amherst, New Hampshire, and I don't remember where exactly that is. I think it's east of here somewhere.
And, well, of course, it's east of here. Keene is the city farthest to the west in New Hampshire. But Amherst, Massachusetts, Amherst, New Hampshire is just along 101 near Bedford. So it's a posh place.
I was thinking of Massachusetts. There's a college down there. I think.
And there's an
There's
Amherst.
Amherst, Mass.
There's a town, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he was happened to be in the library, and he heard a presentation being given about white supremacy, and they tried to suggest that Free Staters, which are Free State Project participants, people who've migrated here as part of the Free State Project, which are full of a bunch of different people from all around, not just the United States, but from elsewhere in the world.
Yep.
The thing that brings them together is their belief in liberty. The Free Staters, they say, are white supremacists, and this is just plain old, slander. I mean, this is...
Yeah, you have to do some real mental gymnastics in order... I believe that many of the people who say it believe it, but if you ask them to back it up, then what they have to do is they have to say things like, well, Free Staters believe in... Free Staters are libertarians. Libertarians believe in capitalism. Capitalism is a system that benefits the... powerful elite that are currently in place, and a variety of things like this.
They're going to bend over backwards to try to...
They got to stack up the facts in order to get to racism, not just say they hate people because of their race.
Because we said so.
Right, because that's would be what a white supremacist would be. A white supremacist would be a person, unless you want to manipulate the terminology. A white supremacist is simply a person who believes that white people are superior on aggregate.
And they only want to be around white people, so they don't want them in their communities, other people in their communities.
Yeah, well, it's likely what they believe, but I mean, the white supremacist, by definition, simply means that they believe that white people are superior on aggregate, to other races for whatever reason. Likely, that person will want to live only around white people.
That would make them a white nationalist if they wanted to.
White nationalist, yeah, that's the.
I guess that's what I was thinking of, because that's what I always hear. It's like,
sure.
Well, we
they use the terms interchangeably, and they obviously, as we're talking about here, lie their butts off.
Yeah.
Well, it is highly likely that a white supremacist will also be a white nationalist.
Indeed.
I mean, it seems like the logical, if you will, conclusion that they would make. And so these, one of the questions I just realized I didn't ask Ryan when he called in was, and I suspect he would have told us if he did, but did you ask a question? Like, you just stumbled into this little meeting, stand there, listen for a moment, and then raise your hand, right?
Yeah.
Like, you said Free Staters are white supremacists? What are you basing that on? Because I'm a Free Stater or whatever, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of these anti-Free State Project meetings that this group has been having, they're called Granite State Progress. They have been pushing the anti-Free State message for years here in New Hampshire. They hate freedom. They love big government. And they have been on the attack for a long time. And so they've been doing this.
Just to talk about that for a second, it just seems so crazy to me, because it's not like the olive branch wasn't proffered. The Free Staters did say at one point. Now, personally, I'm not a Free Stater anymore, but if somebody came to me as though I were one, and I can certainly speak as one, and they were sort of saying, hey, you want to work with the Democrats? The first thing that I would be thinking is how are you trying to scam me? How are you trying to trick me? Because at this point, the Democrats have acted like such a-holes, and the Republicans have, on aggregate, and mind you, I worked within the Republican Party in order to change their platform from the way they had it, because I don't believe what the Republicans believe in a couple of ways. I worked within to stop that. But if the Democrats came and said, hey, do you want to work with us? We're trying to, we're trying to let the Free Staters in because, we're working, we're going to work towards some of the things that you want. And I'd immediately presume they're trying to trick me, and it would take a long time to, convince me otherwise.
Sure. So they've been on the attack for quite a while against the Free State Project, and they've had multiple seminars that have been like this over the years. Now, I don't know if they've come right out. This approach of calling Free Staters white supremacists seems to be somewhat new.
No. They've been doing this all along. This is the playbook. This is move number one.
Okay, it's the first I can recall hearing about it.
I've always heard them do that to Republicans in general, like my whole life. Anybody who hated Obama or didn't want Obama to be president was a racist.
Well, but their recent things that they've been saying has been, hey, Republicans, you need to stay away from these free staters. They're trying to take over your party. You need to vote for the normal Republicans again. So we've actually got the leftists spending money to market to the Republicans to try to identify the free staters to them in the hopes that the Republicans will not value the ideas of liberty and push back against the free staters. Democrats are literally supporting the Republican mainstream at this point. It seems
like, which is hilarious, but it seems like it's too little too late, right? Like they decided to try to split the Republican Party 5 years too late. They might have had some hope when the Democrats were in power, but at that point they're like, we're going to keep them both down. We're going to crush them. But, now I think that there's an interesting turn that occurred here in New Hampshire, which is that the Democrats, because, New Hampshire's just too white, have decided that they're no longer going to use the first in the nation status of New Hampshire. Only Republicans will have their primary in New Hampshire.
Really?
Come 2024 or whatever.
How are they going to do that?
They can do what they want. It's their party.
But the primaries are done through the state. They're not done.
This is what was told to me by an insider. And I don't propose to tell you how it's going to work. I'm just revealing what was told to me.
You think that's coming in 2024 though?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know which Democrat's going to win in 2024 in the primary. So it really is 2028.
Well, I thought the Democrats really wanted to fight to keep their first in the nation primary thing. I thought that was the thing. I didn't know they were just giving it up.
My understanding is they're giving it up completely in lieu of another state which is more ethnically diverse. And that is probably going to weaken the Democratic Party here in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
by a little bit. And little bit is all that matters.
But I don't understand why is that? Why will it weaken the Democratic Party?
Because one of my understanding of it, and it makes some sense to me, is that the Republicans, I think we should interview somebody on this rather than have me attempt to stumble my way through it, but that the Republicans will be bolstered by the first in the nation status. They're important on a national scale. Money will be dumped into the state by Republican PACs, and whereas New Hampshire will diminish on a national scale, and the money will not be dumped in by the Democratic Party.
Okay, so what I've heard about this is that this is a state law. Okay, so that there's actually a state law, an RSA as they call them here in New Hampshire, a statute that says that New Hampshire has to be the first in the nation. Basically, it says if any other state moves its primary up, New Hampshire will move its primary up. That's the way they're playing this. Now, the Democrats may want to change that here in New Hampshire, but they are not in charge of the state legislature at the moment, so I don't think that they're going to get through with that. So I don't understand. And again, like you said, maybe there's somebody out there that knows more about this. Feel free to call in at 603-283-6160. I don't get how they would be able to do anything about this from the outside. This would be something they would have to accomplish by changing, I believe, the state law.
I don't know how it works, but my understanding is that it is a done deal and that the Democrats are doomed. Let's not forget that another issue has occurred is the Democrats allowed the Republicans to win in a year where another time where the Republicans get to set the districts. So in New Hampshire, it has to be by town, so you can't just cut a town in half or anything like that. But the Republicans have yet again
they drew the lines
for I think a century now. Drawn the lines.
There is more coming up here. You can join the show. Hour number 3 is on the way. Whether you want to talk about the big pushback against the Free State Project happening here in New Hampshire, and in my opinion, that's an indicator that we are having tremendous success. The libertarians are being fought against, and that's a good sign. More coming up.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Bank of England says it will not hesitate to raise interest rates in the country in a bid to control inflation. The bank released a statement in the aftermath of the collapse in the value of sterling. It fell overnight in Asia to its lowest rate against the US dollar in more than 50 years, before making a slight recovery on European markets. The UK government, under fire for proposing sweeping tax cuts to stimulate the economy, is promising to set out a medium-term fiscal strategy in late November. Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition, spoke at the annual Labour Party conference.
This is investors taking decisions that are going to have an impact. They're going to impact those nurses, those teachers, because this will mean mortgage rates going up, prices going up, making a bad situation even worse than it is.
And several British financial institutions have now withdrawn mortgage products, citing what they called marketplace conditions. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had her first call today with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Downing Street says she thanked the controversial Saudi royal for his role securing the release last week of 5 Britons held by pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. At least one of them was facing the death penalty. In central Russia today, deadly violence at a school in the city of Izhevsk. 11 children were among 15 people killed by a gunman who was wearing combat fatigues emblazoned with a swastika. He later killed himself at the scene. FSN's Stuart Smith in Moscow on the investigation.
Russian Federal Investigative Committee, which looks into all major incidents like this, say they are investigating the potential motivations. One of the lines of inquiry relates to the fact that indeed a swastika was found on his clothing, so they are looking into his adherence to neo-fascist views and Nazi ideology.
Former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. The news was disclosed in a Russian government gazette today. Snowden has sought refuge in Russia since 2013 from espionage charges that he's facing in the United States. The stage is set in Italy for the country's first woman prime minister. Giorgia Meloni will lead a far-right coalition, according to projected results of the weekend's election. She's vowing to govern in the interests of all Italians. But Alessandro Speziale, Rome bureau chief for Bloomberg, says her election ushers in an era of uncertainty in relations between Italy and the EU.
She doesn't want to leave the EU. She doesn't want to leave the euro. She knows that this would not be accepted by most Italians. She wants to defend more strongly, more vigorously, what she says is the national interest within the EU. We're going to see how this plays out and whether she decides to stick with Italy's traditional allies, France and Germany, or whether she sides with Eastern European countries like Hungary and Poland.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration later this week is convening the first ever summit meeting of the United States and the Pacific Islands. It comes after China stole a march in a part of the world where the US has long historic ties. The wartime battles of Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands, for instance, are etched into American military history. But in April, China surprised Washington by signing a security pact with the Solomon Islands, and Washington has been playing catch-up ever since. Jim Lindsay is with the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations.
You reap what you sow. For about 30 years after 1990, the United States pretty much ignored the islands in the southern Pacific. And I think what you see right now is an administration scrambling while there's a sudden understanding that we're in a rivalry, a competition with China. The amount that we're putting on the table compared to what the Chinese are doing with things like the Belt and Road Initiative are quite paltry. But I think what you're really seeing is an effort by this administration to sort of abide by the first rule of diplomacy, which is show interest in others, and to try to make the case to show that we care. Again, a lot of diplomacy really is about showing up.
And he says ahead of this week's summit, the Biden administration has not been able to indicate any specific deliverables expected to arise from it. The main news again, the Bank of England says it will not hesitate to raise interest rates in a bid to control inflation. The announcement came after sterling took a battering in Asian markets. In the central Russian city of Izhevsk, 11 children were among 15 people killed by a gunman wearing combat fatigues emblazoned with a swastika. And former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
In a move that puzzled patrons of the global fast food chain, McDonald's launched an extensive ad campaign this week entitled, "And Yet Is Not Beef Itself an Expression of Wanton Lust?" to air at prime time on several networks. The lengthy advertisement, which makes scant reference to any products or promotions, posits to viewers that perhaps beef is merely a symbolic expression of lust in its most wanton and depraved form.
When we call for beef, what are we really asking for? Is it the caress of a gentle lover? Or the blade of an executioner? The rage of steel on bone? Would you yourself deny beef? Would beef deny itself of you?
In other news, a spaced-out flower child is grooving on a doobie wave. A new study reveals nothing Pfizer's lawyers can't take care of, and the parents of an adorable child on a TV show are most likely insane. Thus ends nature's majestic cycle of weekly news reviews, only to gracefully begin itself anew in exactly 1 week's time.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. And you can bring up whatever you want to discuss as we kick off the third hour with you tonight. It's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Mark.
We will go back to your phone calls and thoughts. Mark, you are in the middle, well, at some point, we were talking about statistics, a poll that was conducted by YouGov.
Yep.
And asking Americans a variety of different questions, but one important takeaway was that 50% of Americans believe that the United States will no longer be a superpower within 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't say whether it was no longer going to be a military superpower or an economic superpower. It wasn't really clear.
I don't think Americans probably are dice. I mean, from what I'm seeing on these questions, it's not like it's being asked to answer that question well, right? Like you need to have a certain level of education in a particular area.
Yeah.
Or and that education doesn't necessarily need to be college. It just needs to be, you need to have educated yourself in a certain area.
Sure.
Or at the very least, you need to have, you have high verbal skills in the top 10%, things like that, right? And they're not asking necessarily those folks.
Well, plus, can you even be a military superpower without having economic strength? I mean, you got to get that money from somewhere, right, to pay the military?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the Soviet Union at one point was certainly a military superpower, but not necessarily an economic one in that they they were bad at it.
Well, right. They extracted all the wealth from their people and then put it all in the military. So I guess, yeah. That's a good point.
I mean, that can only last so long, right?
It was pretty obvious.
Indeed.
Right?
Yeah, indeed. Well, and the money printing going on here in the United States is only going to be able to last so long, especially if we start to see what has long been predicted, that is to say that the U.S. dollar is no longer the world reserve currency. If various different nations start to give up on the dollar, then we may see hyperinflation hit here sooner rather than later.
I think that there's some interesting points that can be made for that argument, but there's also some interesting ones that are against it. Like, look at the euro and the pound and pretty much every other currency out there, barring the ruble, not doing so great. The yuan, not doing real well right now. And I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical of the claim. People who make the claim don't state the other side of it. And I am always circumspect because I don't know. I just want to know the truth. I don't have an axe to grind.
So what were some of the other takeaways you wanted to share from this poll?
So what I want to do is I want to read some of these questions, then go through them with you because it's fascinating. It's a long list and worthy of an entire show of itself. So I'll just read some to you, and I'll tell you a few things about them.
Okay.
The U.S. will no longer be a global superpower. Looks like 50% say that, probably, and more Republicans and Democrats than independents.
Was it yes, no, maybe? And if so, how many said maybe?
It's likely, very likely, somewhat likely, somewhat likely, very likely, not sure, prefer not to say, not very likely, not likely at all.
So 50% said somewhat or very likely is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So 12% said not likely at all that the U.S. will no longer be a global superpower. And this part doesn't say 10 years, but previously it did.
Got it.
So, 2,
nothing lasts forever. I mean, the U.S. is not going to be a superpower forever because the U.S. will not be around forever, just like all nations on the planet. It will not last forever. The question is, how long will it last?
That's right. And to answer questions like this, you really have to look at the other nations and what they're doing. And, I still remain skeptical that the U.S. is going to diminish on a global scale in a ranking system, be below China anytime soon. I think China has a huge demographics problem. That's not going to, there are going to be a lot of young Chinese people taking care of a lot more old Chinese people than they were before. And this is one of the reasons that I'm at the very least interested in the idea that China created the COVID virus in order to kill old people so they wouldn't have to take care of them. If I was an evil dictator,
but wasn't the United States also involved in creating the virus?
You can look at yes or no on these. People will write anything you want to hear on the internet. The most recent thing is no, it was from bats. No, it really was from bats.
The most recent thing was that it came from a U.S. lab.
Haven't heard that one. Yeah. That I can't imagine that
U.S.
being the
lab
case.
In China, the Wuhan lab.
No, one in the U.S.
Oh.
I don't have it in front of me right now.
Let me go on here. There will be a total economic collapse is the predictions from this poll, and it looks like 47% say that there will be a total economic collapse. There will be a civil war between people who are Republicans and Democrats, and that is a 40% of Americans consider that somewhat likely or very likely.
So total economic collapse, again, they are inflating the currency. It's not to the point of hyperinflation yet, even if you look at unofficial numbers. If you look at shadow stats, they're at 17%. The official government numbers are around 8+%.
That's the economic collapse one, yeah.
Yeah. Shadow stats, they calculate by the old way that the feds used to calculate it back in like 1980 or prior to that. And so, again, that's only about 15, 17%. And it's a lot. There's no doubt about that, but we're not to the point of hyperinflation yet. They have the benefit of spreading the U.S. dollar all around the planet, so when they print dollars out in the U.S., it steals value from global users. It's not just stealing that. It's not the same thing as like Argentina or Turkey, where you are seeing high levels of inflation because whatever it is, the lira, I think, is it the lira in Turkey?
Turkey, yeah.
Yeah.
No, Turkey is the lira was Italy.
Okay.
But what is in the Turkey?
I know it was lira.
I should know this. I can identify its flag.
What's that, Bunny?
I know it was the lira because when I heard it last year, I was like,
lira?
oh, that's a pretty word. Why don't we have the lira instead of the dollar?
Maybe it is the Turkish lira. Yeah, this is the problem with the.
It is Turkish lira.
Thanks for looking it up.
It has been on quite a decline, and
yes,
other countries as well.
They're printing the heck out of it.
But that's because one of the reasons why it affects those countries greater is that they only use it there. right? Like the Turkish lira isn't getting use in other
United
places
States.
for the most part, right? Like you can't go to Mexico and buy things with the Turkish lira.
No.
You can't go to El Salvador and buy things. You can't go to
El Salvador actually uses the U.S. dollar. So
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
These are countries that
but you could use the U.S. dollar almost everywhere. There was a country in Africa that I was in, in the too distant past. I really couldn't use the U.S. dollar there. But
that's surprising.
You can they'll almost always give you an exchange rate at the register. Now that exchange rate won't be good, but they will give you one.
Yeah.
Well, was it the whole country or just that island you were on?
It was that was my experience, is that there was a country that I was in that wouldn't let me do it.
Right. So anyway, that's the point I'm making here. There are countries where the U.S. dollar is essentially their legal tender. And
there's a few.
So when the U.S. government, Federal Reserve,
ones that can't run their own central bank, basically.
For whatever reason, even in countries where there is a central bank, like Venezuela, they've now allowed dollarization to happen there, and it's actually helped their economy to do that.
I'll bet.
So, when the Federal Reserve is printing more dollars, they're not just stealing money they're not stealing value from Americans. Because remember, when you increase the money supply, that's what inflation is. That's the definition. It's a real definition of inflation, increasing the money supply. When you increase the money supply, you steal value from savers. You steal value from anybody that has dollars in a bank account or in a wallet or whatever, and that includes the people all around the planet with a dollar. So that's why they can get away with it more here. They can print more here and do it for longer here.
And this is also the reason that in 2008, when a whole bunch of money was printed, but the money wasn't really released, it was just given to banks to bolster them. They were too big to fail, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't released into the public. That's why you said money supply, you didn't say print money. And people use them often. Libertarians will often use them synonymously, but in that case, in that odd little circumstance, it didn't happen. We didn't see a large increase in consumer prices because those dollars never got released into the money supply.
That's a good point. So there's more from this poll, Mark, that you
and I think it's some things that undermine the poll's veracity to me, too.
All right, on the way, we'll share that with you. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join the show here and bring up whatever's on your mind. This is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Mark.
And join us online anytime you want. Just head over to freetalklive.com and do enjoy those features there as you wish. There's a lot of different options and things for you to do there at freetalklive.com. As we continue here, we've got this study, Mark, that you've been sharing with us from YouGov, talking about what Americans believe about the future for the United States. And apparently, according to not quite a majority, 50%, they're saying that the U.S.'s future within the next 10 years is to no longer be a global superpower. 40% say that it's heading towards a civil war, apparently between Republicans and Democrats, which is bizarre. But, you know, better than that, better than to actually have a civil war, why not just have a civil breakup and say goodbye to this stupid idea of this union trying to force everyone together?
That is actually stated by some people who've, sort of made statements, some quoted statements in here. And to me, that makes sense. But they don't really talk about that in, they're not really asking that question. They're not making it clear, that question. Will federalism increase on the national level, allowing states to, be more right or left or anything like that, right? So, and I think that it's probably the least likely outcome of them all, is because power tends to centralize. The founding fathers said so. They, ostensibly created a system that was supposed to prevent that. Of course, this was the first shot. The United States Constitution is the oldest constitution in the world. Sorry, San Marco, maybe the second oldest. And it basically, it was an experiment, and we'll see how it goes. But I don't believe crap. Yeah, I don't believe that you're going to see federalism somehow reinstituted. But if it could be done, it would be done by the Supreme Court that has, this Supreme Court is more likely to do it than any other.
Okay, so what's the next thing you want to share?
So what I want to share is it says there's going to be a civil war between people who are Republicans and Democrats at 40%, right? But there's also civil wars between other, options here. So there will be a civil war in the U.S. It's actually lower than a civil war between Republicans and Democrats. Where are they going to fight it?
What does that mean if they just say there will be a civil war in the U.S. and they don't say who it's between, like just states?
It means that 3% of people clearly don't know where they are.
What percentage said it would be a civil war?
Civil war in the U.S., it's 3% lower than the 40%, so 37%.
37.
And there will be a civil war between red and blue states. I guess they don't know what that means because that's only, 32%. Let's see. I'm only getting the ones that have to do with civil war.
I think, Bonnie, what they're saying is that people just have a feeling, right? Like they think that people can't come together. There's more political division than ever, and people understand that politics, at some level, whether they can verbalize it or not, people understand that politics is violence against your neighbor. And
it's certainly in lieu of violence.
Yeah, I was going to say they at least think that there would be violence if we can't figure it out in a political way.
And that's what they believe is happening.
There has to be. That's the only other option.
They think that, people are more divided than they've ever been, so of course a war must result from that division, rather than just saying goodbye and declaring independence and seceding. Now, did you tell me there's questions about that?
There is a question about secession, but I want to go through these Civil War questions and talk about the percentages just to undermine this, because the people who are being asked are just your average American, and they don't know nothing. But I'm happy to go with that in just a second. So the last one. Let's see, the Civil War between people of different races. That's 28%.
Wow, that's crazy.
And then there will be a civil war between people living in cities and people living in rural areas.
I think that'd be the most likely one. Like, that's how it would start out.
That's what I believe, too.
Because red state versus blue state doesn't make sense. What about the cities in red states? And
right.
Like, they're not going to just fight for their state.
Red areas versus blue areas make the most sense. And red areas tend to be rural, and blue areas tend to be urban. And this just goes to show that the people who believe, the 40% of people who believe there was a civil war between Republicans and Democrats don't understand mathematics, because only don't understand geography and how Republicans and Democrats are distributed, because only 22% believe that it will be between cities and rural areas.
Which is normally cities are occupied by Democrats.
And literally, if there is a civil war between Republicans and Democrats, it will be a war between the New York City Metro, the West Coast of the United States, and then the center. I mean, Chicago has fallen. I mean, it will be the first thing that you hear.
All they're going to have to do is say, well, no more food for you.
Right. So, and you pointed out that the Republicans, that the red areas control not only food production but energy production. Where do you think your power grid originates? Just the idea that Democrats could fight a civil war is ridiculous. They have no weapons.
No weapons, no food.
What are they going to do with it? Replica katanas? I mean, come on. It's just not going to happen. So let's go on to this question. I think this was a great one and something you're going to be interested in. This is the question. States will secede from the United States. And that is...
Within 10 years or just at some point?
It just says within, presumably within 10 years.
Okay.
But it started with that. So it sets the pace for 10 years.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But it doesn't say that. And what it says here is that 10% believe that it is very likely, 18% that believe it is somewhat likely, so you get 28% believing it, 23% prefer not to say or just not sure.
23% on the fence. It's not bad.
25% think it's not very likely, and 23% think it's not likely at all.
Okay.
And
almost 50% are saying it's not going to happen.
And this is one of the statements I'd say about this is that
we don't need them all.
One of the just this one in particular. Yeah. You are a tried and true patriot because you will stand here and wait for the day that you can make America better by having New Hampshire or other states secede from it. I, on the other hand, say, F this crazy crap, and I left.
I don't care about making America
yes, you
better.
Do.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
You want New Hampshire to be a better place, so you'll stay in America. Because you're a patriot, man. You love this place.
Stay in America to leave America, not stay in America because it's America.
I love New Hampshire. I love the freedom that people appreciate here, and I can see that
freedom of America originated in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is America.
That's why New Hampshire should say goodbye first, because we can be a free place again.
You believe in what America stands for.
No, I don't.
I'll say that I
Justice,
believe in what
the
America
American way.
was supposed to stand for. I'll say that I believe in that.
Well, but it doesn't stand for those things now.
Yeah, I know. So that's why we need to leave.
Exactly.
Well, I think that you're trying to save it from the politicians.
No,
that's what I think.
Not true. I'm trying to get the hell out from underneath the politicians. And apparently there's almost 1 in 3 people, according to this survey nationwide, that agree with that, which is, by the way,
no, that believe that it's likely, not that they agree with it.
Okay, good point.
Do you want to know?
Well, we actually did a study here in the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence did a study here that actually did ask the right questions about this, and it is nearly 1 in 3 people in New Hampshire. They're ready for New Hampshire to be an independent nation
There's a
now.
Republican and Democrat split on this too.
I bet there is. More coming up here in moments. This is Free Talk Live. We'll dig a little deeper.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Bank of England says it will not hesitate to raise interest rates in the country in a bid to control inflation. The bank released a statement in the aftermath of the collapse in the value of sterling. It fell overnight in Asia to its lowest rate against the US dollar in more than 50 years, before making a slight recovery on European markets. The UK government, under fire for proposing sweeping tax cuts to stimulate the economy, is promising to set out a medium-term fiscal strategy in late November. Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition, spoke at the annual Labour Party conference.
This is investors taking decisions that are going to have an impact. They're going to impact those nurses, those teachers, because this will mean mortgage rates going up, prices going up, making a bad situation even worse than it is.
And several British financial institutions have now withdrawn mortgage products, citing what they called marketplace conditions. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss had her first call today with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Downing Street says she thanked the controversial Saudi royal for his role securing the release last week of 5 Britons held by pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. At least one of them was facing the death penalty. In central Russia today, deadly violence at a school in the city of Izhevsk. 11 children were among 15 people killed by a gunman who was wearing combat fatigues emblazoned with a swastika. He later killed himself at the scene. FSN's Stuart Smith in Moscow on the investigation.
Russian Federal Investigative Committee, which looks into all major incidents like this, say they are investigating the potential motivations. One of the lines of inquiry relates to the fact that indeed a swastika was found on his clothing, so they are looking into his adherence to neo-fascist views and Nazi ideology.
Former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. The news was disclosed in a Russian government gazette today. Snowden has sought refuge in Russia since 2013 from espionage charges that he's facing in the United States. The stage is set in Italy for the country's first woman prime minister. Giorgia Meloni will lead a far-right coalition, according to projected results of the weekend's election. She's vowing to govern in the interests of all Italians. But Alessandro Speziale, Rome bureau chief for Bloomberg, says her election ushers in an era of uncertainty in relations between Italy and the EU.
She doesn't want to leave the EU. She doesn't want to leave the euro. She knows that this would not be accepted by most Italians. She wants to defend more strongly, more vigorously, what she says is the national interest within the EU. We're going to see how this plays out and whether she decides to stick with Italy's traditional allies, France and Germany, or whether she sides with Eastern European countries like Hungary and Poland.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us here. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Americans asked another question about secession. And will it be happening within the next decade? About a third of them think it is. And about another 20, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm just remembering from what you said, Mark. About another 20-something% said they're not sure. And about 50% said, nah, it's not going to happen. So we're going to dig a little deeper. You said there's a breakdown on the demographics or the parties, political parties.
Political party, yeah.
We'll talk about that here in a moment. It's Ian, Bonnie, and Mark in the studio, and the number is 603-283-6160. But first, David is on the line in New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, observation and comment on what you've been talking about. First of all, people don't seem to be that familiar. They know the word war, civil war, revolution, coup, but there's like a half a dozen other types of political movements like that are none of the above, and I can't list them out from memory, but you need to study them because there are more nuances to it. And number two, the main problem that we have right now is that the federal government has gone rogue. They are an illegal government, and they haven't yet been reined in and called on it and answered for it, and that's the problem. And if there is
how do you do that?
War, well, I don't have all of the answers, but the military has the right and the ability and the power to remove an unlawful government if the normal civic process doesn't do it.
So a military coup.
In that case, yeah, if the military is used to force out an illegal federal government, then you can call that a military coup. Yeah, it's not true. No, it's not. Well, it's not truly a military coup because under that scenario, it's not an unlawful movement against a legitimate government. It's a legitimate government from a movement of the people using the military against an unlawful government, is what I'm saying. So that's slightly different than what you.
That's probably never going to happen. When my dad was in the Army, he got investigated because one of his soldiers that didn't like him reported him for turning all the TVs in the clinic he worked in to Fox News and talking bad about Obama.
Okay, well that's
he got
investigated. That's one scenario. So to continue on, thirdly, I agree with Mark that there will be no civil war in the ways that were listed out because somebody's got to roll on somebody. And the people in this country that have the ability to fight ain't going to roll on nobody. And the people that would like to roll on somebody don't have the ability to pull that off. So it ain't going to happen.
What do you mean roll on?
Yeah, I was going to say.
You mean like roll up on?
Snitch?
Well, like the cops roll up on you and take
roll
action,
up on.
like
Okay.
Like the military rolls in and takes action. So that's what roll up on means.
Okay.
Roll in on. Anyway, so lastly, unfortunately and you hate me for saying it, but I highly doubt that in today's hostile world that the rest of the nation will allow any given state to secede, because doing so puts the non-seceding states at risk against foreign attackers.
But the whole military is going to go and take out the federal government and replace them and just do that all rogue. That's totally going to happen.
It's not what I said.
So I tend to think, I think it's very interesting. So if you asked an American if they wanted to incorporate Tijuana into the United States, what would they say in all likelihood? Can somebody give me some answers?
No, because it's dangerous and criminals.
You get better deals on stuff down there. Why not?
Well, you would say that. I just am talking about people in general.
And David, you got an opinion on that?
Tijuana, do I have a personal opinion whether we should...
Right. So I suggest to you, a man on the street interview, what do you think about incorporating Tijuana in the United States,
David? Annex it.
Let's annex it.
Well, the answer would be no, because you're going to have resistance from Mexico without a doubt, and I'm not going to make a hostile movement against Mexico to allow Tijuana to come in if they want to.
What if Tijuana voted for it?
Well, no, because they have other obligations under the current system that we have until further notice, until things change. They have obligations to Mexico. If Mexico wants to say, fine, go ahead, Tijuana, go to the United States, then fine, we'll take them, yeah.
And I don't know what estado that Tijuana's in, but, if we were to say the entire state of, whatever Tijuana, the city of Tijuana's in, I would say no, because I don't want to take on the welfare responsibilities of paying for these people. It's not like
those guys work harder than Americans do.
I'm not claiming that they don't work harder. I'm claiming that there's a lot of families there that be like, oh, great, now we get the government's responsibility to pay for my school. And, all kinds of things. I wouldn't annex a new place because there are very few places that are wealthy enough that I would be willing to annex them, and any of them that are wealthy enough wouldn't be annexed.
Well, look, to your final point, David, you said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said that if a state secedes, that the rest of the country won't stand for it because it would somehow put them in jeopardy from a foreign attack?
Yes, because the state that secedes and if it becomes an independent nation, it has if it actually is a legitimate independent nation, it has the right, for instance, to allow China or Russia or whomever to put nuclear or whatever they want, do whatever they want to threaten the other peoples that are here on this continent.
Yeah.
Why would that be in the state's best interest? Like, New Hampshire probably wouldn't want to do that because we'd suddenly be a target from Washington, D.C. I'm just saying that it's unlikely to happen.
The money would be huge. This is the reason that
money
Saipan,
for death,
this is the reason that Saipan gets huge money from the United States for doing nothing.
You're saying the Russian government would pay the people of New Hampshire, or the Chinese would pay?
Chinese government would pay the people of Saipan because they would want to get missiles very close to Guam.
Thank you for the call tonight, David. I appreciate hearing from you. We're not talking about Saipan, though. We're talking about New Hampshire.
Sure.
Do you think the people of New Hampshire would actually put up with Chinese occupation of their territory?
No, I think that this is more what David said. If going along David's line of thinking, I think what's more likely is that the United States, when it realized it couldn't, presuming the unlikelihood of a secession of New Hampshire, like highly unlikely situation of that occurring, after the scare tactics and finally there's a campaign that comes through where 66%, 68%, 70% of New Hampshire granite staters say, yes, we want to secede. After they've had the bejesus scared out of them, the federal government says, you won't get your Social Security check. Yeah. You're not going to have a bank account. You won't be able to drive to Maine. You won't be able to do this and that. And so after all of that, the highly unlikely circumstance, then the United States attempts to, rattle the saber and scare them and, a few things like that, and they don't come back. Then they just pay Canada, who they've paid to do...
Who pays Canada?
The United States government.
Okay.
Pays Canada like they've paid Canada to spy on the American people because the CIA can't, but Canada can.
Yeah.
The whole Canadian intelligence apparatus is funded by the United States government. Mm-hmm. So they pay Canada, roll your troops in, take over New Hampshire, give it back to us. And Canada says, all right, eh?
No, they won't.
Why not?
Canadians are too nice.
What? That's the stupidest thing you've said all night.
Haven't you ever met Canadians? They're really nice people. Weren't you in their jail?
I was in their jail, and they darn sure would have shot me with their very nice guns if I had tried to escape.
Look, we got a lot of guns here, too. In fact, I suspect there's probably more guns per capita in New Hampshire than there are.
A rifle won't do anything against a tank. It's just not useful.
Well, we got machine guns. And I bet you there's
whoopie-doo, and no, they won't.
Some
we also have tanks.
Guns.
I mean, we're also talking about the government of New Hampshire, not just the people now.
Yeah, there is a national guard
shock and awe campaign coming across from Berlin on south.
I have never heard this ridiculous theory.
No,
Mark.
It's an interesting one. I've never heard it before either, but it's great.
RMCP horsemen.
You're not going to bring horses in here. They're literally going to roll up tanks as fast as they could.
The Canadians could barely deal with a couple hundred truckers in their capital city for
That's because they were their own truckers. If they're invading a foreign country, look at what the Canadians did in 1812. They burned the White House down and almost took the whole country.
Canadians like America too much. They wouldn't want to.
They'll get a little piece of it.
I don't think they're going to like New Hampshire's response if they try that crap. There's more coming up here. 603-283-6160. Interesting theory, though. One I've not heard at this point. 603.
David is a brilliant man.
283-6160.
Desert weirdo.
You can join us here in the remaining moments of Free Talk Live, which are coming up. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Are you dipping into savings to pay the bills? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Many Americans did squirrel away that relief money Uncle Sam sent during the pandemic while we weren't spending on this and that as we quarantined. Still, hitting the piggy bank for day-to-day expenses is scary and fundamentally unsustainable. Notable exception, your credit card balance. It's double-digit debt, and your bank is paying, 1% interest on your savings? Slay that plastic and pay cash for what you need by making smart trade-offs about what you want. Example, Yahoo Sports estimates it costs $253 for a family of 4 to go to a Major League Baseball game, unless they go after an early dinner at home. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here in the remaining moments. We may have time for you. Call in now at 603-283-6160. Ian, Bonnie, and Mark in the studio tonight. That's 603-283-6160. And don't forget, coming up in June of next year, Fork Fest is back. It is the 7th annual Fork Fest. Perfect excuse for you to come up here and check out the beauty of New Hampshire. You'll be, if you go with us, you'll be there in northern New Hampshire, the beautiful White Mountains, for the 15th through the 18th of June with like-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians at Rogers Campground. All you need to do to attend Fork Fest, because there's no tickets for Fork Fest, it's a decentralized event. You just have to get your campsite, your RV site, or your motel room with Rogers Campground. That said, I would move sooner rather than later on this, because the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which in 2023 is going to follow Fork Fest, which is the way it was for the first 3 years of Fork Fest, that event is likely to sell out. In fact, the rumor has it the park is nearly sold out already. I don't know if that's true. I haven't verified it myself, but that's what I've heard, is that for the Porcupine Freedom Festival, that park is nearly sold out. I'm not going to say Fork Fest will sell out, but it's probably going to be the busiest Fork Fest thus far, because there's always a big run up to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So you ought to get your campsite, your RV site right now. Just go to forkfest.party and you can get the details about contacting Rogers Campground, and you can get in touch with other Fork Fest attendees there. It's June 15th through the 18th at Rogers Campground next year in June of 2023. Again, forkfest.party. We will look forward to seeing you there. As we go to the phones here to your calls and thoughts, we got Jack on the line in Washington State. Go ahead, Jack.
Well, congratulations, Bonnie and Ian, on your marriage.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What was on your mind tonight?
Well, it's an honor to talk to Edge.
Talk to Mark Edge. You cut out a sec there.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark Edge. I've never been on the show with him. So
welcome, sir.
Cool.
Here you are.
I was going to talk more about like Iran and thing going on over there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I had that in my show prep for tonight, and we just didn't get to it.
What's going on there?
Yeah, can you summarize for our listeners that may have no idea what you're talking about?
Well, if you go to Twitter and you an Iran protest or Iran revolution hashtag, you're going to see women on top of cars. And then 5 days later, those women, you can see them dead. They're really doing something. It's insane that. It's not like, I know you guys like BLM and stuff, but BLM ain't going to leave.
Mark hates BLM. He thinks they're all bad people.
No.
No, Mark does, I said.
The organization is bad. But
I feel the same way, Jack. I feel like the organization is bad news.
Same here.
The individuals, on the other hand, are all different, and they have different beliefs, and some of them legitimately want to see police reformed to be less awful, and others of them are communists. So, it just depends on, who you're talking to. Anyway, what about Iran? So what's going on over there?
Well, most major population centers have been covered by protests, a lot of violence and stuff, which sometimes seems necessary.
What are they protesting?
They want to take their scarves off. They want to drive cars. It's mostly ran by women, as far as I can say.
Okay, I did hear that there was like some kind of modesty police that shot a woman for not wearing her scarf right. I don't know what they actually call those.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not a burqa. It's different.
Right.
Hijab.
I've heard it's not hijab there either. I've heard there's another term for whatever it is that they're taking off, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, at some point or another, we have to use terms that Americans understand.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up here, Jack. I'm going to pull up the story that I had since you called in about it, and I appreciate hearing from you. So the story here is from dnyuz.com, which basically just copies other sources. So I'll see if I can find what it was. New York Times, that's where this originally came from. The largest anti-government protest since 2009 in Iran gathered strength this weekend, on Saturday spreading to as many as 80 cities, even as the so-called authorities escalated a crackdown that has reportedly killed dozens of people and brought the arrests of prominent activists and journalists, according to rights groups and news media reports. Internet access, especially on cell phone apps widely used for communication, continue to be disrupted or fully blocked. I know that Signal was working over the weekend to try to regain access to the people of Iran so they can continue to provide them services without the government's knowledge. And the government's trying to block Signal, basically, from people using it. Affecting their ability to communicate with the outside world. News from Iran has trickled out with many hours of delay. While the protests in 2009 erupted over an election that was condemned as fraudulent, the current demonstrations are apparently focused on Iranian security forces, with reports of vicious beatings of security officers and fire bombings of the local headquarters of the notorious Morality Police. In many cities, including Tehran, the capital security forces responded by opening fire on the crowds. On a couple of apartment complexes in Tehran, officers fired at windows. In the city of that's a hard one to pronounce in English. They threw tear gas into apartments, according to witnesses. Iranian state media said that at least 35 people had been killed in the unrest, but human rights groups said that number is likely to be much higher. A previous death toll of 17 included at least 5 members of their security services. Videos posted online and the scale of the response are difficult to independently verify, but video and photos sent by witnesses to the New York Times that were known, to the New York Times were broadly in line with the images posted widely online. Resentments and anger have been building for months, particularly among young Iranians, in response to a crackdown ordered by their hardline president that has targeted women. That comes on top of a litany of complaints over the years of corruption, mismanagement of the economy, inept handling of COVID, and widespread political repression. The problems have persisted under President Ibrahim Raisi, who came to power in an election in which any potential contenders were eliminated before the vote, particularly those from the reformist faction. So it sounds a lot like Ukraine, where they have banned the opposition party.
Yep.
Yet while the mainstream media here in the United States touts Ukraine as some sort of bastion of democratic freedoms. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
Up what gun control is like in Iran. I remember during the Iraq War that you could expect almost every household to be armed. And this is one of the concerns that obviously U.S. soldiers would have in Iraq. But in Iran, it looks like no guns, all control. Only limited
except in the hands
hunting
of the
with
state.
rifles and sure. The state that's how the state gets its power. Mao Zedong, government power comes from the barrel of a gun.
He said that. The morality police under the predecessor of the current president had been discouraged from enforcing Iran's often draconian laws against women, particularly the requirement that they wear the hijab, so apparently it is the hijab, in public in the quote-unquote proper fashion. But Iran's powerful supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who is now, wasn't he put into place by the CIA back in the day?
I don't think so. The Shah.
Oh, the Shah.
Yeah, the Shah was put in place by the CIA and he was thrown over
Khamenei took him out.
Yeah, Khamenei and his forces, yeah.
He is now said to be in bed resting after emergency surgery engineered the
He's old as hell.
Yeah, he's got to be. Engineered the ascent of Mr. Raisi, eliminating an important outlet for the frustrations of Iran's younger generation. Those frustrations are now boiling over in a small, mostly Kurdish city of Oshnave, reportedly fell to protesters when security forces retreated after days of intense fighting, a paramilitary leader news site and the editor of a Kurdish news site said. Quote, the liberation has far-reaching consequences for other cities, the man said, describing the town as a gateway to other areas of Iran, and so on. So yeah, things are happening there. Crowds are chanting freedom in some videos that are being posted on social media.
What do they mean when they say freedom, Ian?
To take their hijab off, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it certainly would be a fundamental thing. The ability. I think it's hilarious, by the way, how many Democrats are out there worried about women being able to wear their hijabs in France.
I heard about that. That's weird that but those things are both going on at the same time. I mean, people should be allowed to wear and not wear whatever they want, including a face mask or a hijab.
You're talking about France is prohibiting people from wearing a hijab. Correct?
Yeah, especially on beaches and burkinis is outlawed or whatever the situation is. I think that you can, when you sort of control a place, if you legitimately control a place, right? Like you somehow got it. Like I could say no naked people are allowed to just walk into my house.
Well, yeah.
Right? Fair thing to say. So a nation is not that much different if they legitimately gained power. But the problem is many nations did not. So if France is, a legitimate power, then they should be able to say, hey, look, you want to come here, you want to live here, you can't wear this silly headdress thing. They should be able to do that.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about it tonight, but we will return tomorrow. And you can comment on whatever's on your mind, especially if you didn't get in tonight. Call earlier in the show. That always helps. We'll see you then. Online in the meantime at freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.